I'd like to call the meeting to order, ladies and gentlemen. Councilman Reyno, will you please lead us in the prayer? We have a special intention, Councilman Impastato.
Yeah, I'd like to I have two special intentions. One is the Vetrano family. E.J. Vetrano is a longtime coach at Mus Bertolino Playground who's suffering from the effects of Alzheimer's and is heading in a very bad direction. So we'd like to keep their family in our prayers, including his brother Danny Vetrano and other Vetranos who work throughout various city departments. Also, I'd like to keep the Villio family in our prayers. Father of Rob, Ray, and Debbie Villio. Debbie, one of the attorneys who does substantial work for the city of Kenner. Their father, Ray, who passed away a week or so ago. So, thank you.
And in addition to the ones that Councilman Impastato, thank you for doing that, Councilman Impastato, Lynn Bergeron, who is the wife of one of our recreation people who has done a fabulous job in the city of Kenner, our hearts and prayers go with Mr. Bergeron.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Are there any more? Councilman Reyno, would you please lead us in the prayer?
Let us bow our heads and remember that we are in the presence of the Lord. O God of creation, you have blessed us with the four seasons. As we prepare to welcome in this fall season, may the earliest setting of the sun remind us to take time to rest. May the changing of the colors of the leaves remind us of the wonders of your creation. When the cooler temperatures arrive, may the steam of our breath in the cool morning air remind us that it is you who gives us the breath of life. May the harvest of the fields remind us of the abundance that we have been given and the bounty we are to share with others. May the dying of the summer spirit remind us of your great promise that death is temporary and life is eternal. We praise you for your goodness forever and ever. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We have a special guest today, Boy Scout Group number 33. Would you gentlemen, with your parents and Scout leaders, come to the mic and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum this evening. In accordance with Council Resolution Number B14550, please be advised that all cellular telephones, pagers, beepers, and other devices of this nature must be deactivated or silenced throughout the council meeting. Under the consent agenda this evening, we have item 1, approval of minutes, the regular council meeting of August 17th, 2017. Item 2 is approval of alcoholic beverage permit applications. Item 2A is a resolution granting an alcoholic beverage permit to Friends of Rivertown on September 30th, 2017 at Lake Town, being property owned by the City of Kenner in Kenner, Louisiana. Item 3 is approval of bingo and public gathering applications. Item 3A is application number 2042-17, Mitchell Brothers and Sons Incorporated, doing business as Mitchell Brothers Amusements, to hold a public gathering on September 28, 2017 through October 1st, 2017 for the purpose of a community carnival at the Esplanade Mall in Kenner, Louisiana. Item 3B is application number 2044-17, the City of Kenner to hold a public gathering on October 28, 2017 from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. for the purpose of a trunk or treat and movie in the park at Mus Bertolino Stadium in Kenner, Louisiana. Item 3C is application number 2045-17, New Hope Community Development to hold a public gathering on October 7, 2017 from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. for the purpose of a community unity and parade at 2715 Gadsden Street in Kenner, Louisiana. Item 4 is correspondence, reports from the mayor, CAO, or department heads. Item 4A, at the request of the administration, a report from Mayor Zahn.
Mayor Zahn, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Council Chairman. Ashley, I don't have any remarks this time because my remarks, I'm going to save my time and let it go to the Friends of Rivertown. As you know, we had about 2 weekends ago, we had Freedom Fest in Laketown. There was a request at the last council meeting for the Friends of Rivertown to come before the council and give a report. That was only within 3 days of the event, 3 or 4 days of the event. Obviously, there was no time to get those numbers done. Since that time, obviously over the last 2 weeks, the Friends of Rivertown have compiled those numbers, and Ms. Gail Whedon with the Friends of Rivertown are here. But in the same spirit of transparency, I've asked for Theater 13 in Rivertown, the Rivertown Repertory Theater, to come up and also give a presentation shortly after Ms. Gail does with the Friends of Rivertown. So I'm going to turn it over to, or you can call Ms. Gail up. My presentation goes to 2 different groups. Thank you, Council Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Name and address, please.
Gail Yaden, 3212 Roosevelt in Kenner, and I'm with the president of the Friends of Rivertown. And I've done many events and have never been called here to give a report. I usually send the administration what we do, how much we made, how much we spent. And when I saw the meeting last week, I was a little insulted about a resolution to kind of make me come here. But, you know, I've done many events, movies in the park, movies, Lunde Gras, Trunk or Treat, Christmas Village. We buy shows for the planetarium, the Hot Diggity Dog Fest, and more events. And now, all of a sudden, because we did this wonderful Freedom Fest, they're asking for the report, which is no problem. I have all the figures, and we were going to do this anyway. But first, on the meeting, you'd said that some vendors were upset because they weren't asked, didn't get applications to be a participant. The one vendor, I did speak with him. He wanted to do something that someone else was doing, and I asked him if he could do, you know, chicken and a different dish would be great. Because what I tried to do is to let everybody make money, have one vendor per type of food. He had a problem with the insurance, and I told him he could get on hours for $12, and he never did call me back, but I did send him the application. So if he was a vendor for music in the park, he did get an application in the mail, but a lot of people get it in the mail and say they never got them. But we did send that out. There was also a comment about the parking, charging $5 for parking. There are a lot of events at the Pontchartrain Center that do charge for parking. Personally, I think it's something that we should do on an ongoing basis, even if it's to maintain the parking lot at the Pontchartrain Center. $5 is not that much. If you go to New Orleans for the jewelry show, it's $15 for you to park. So I think that's just in general, more events are charging people to park. When I met with the Treasure Chest, they did not have a problem with using their parking. They said they couldn't stop the people from parking. It was fine with them. They moved their employees off-site to another lot down Williams, and they didn't have a problem of anybody using their parking. Because if that was going to be a problem, we would have addressed it. So their lot was full, though. I have all the figures. I think
Excuse
the
me,
question.
Ms. Gail, do you have I don't have a copy of the report.
No, I do have the handout. I was going to give you all handouts after.
Okay.
I just need to make copies. I don't have copies of it. This is the only
Yeah,
one I
I
have.
think if we all had a copy while you went through the report,
Okay.
it would be kind of advantageous for us to have it.
Do you want just the one page or all of them?
All right. Everything that you're going to discuss, I think I would like to have it. I'm sure everybody else would too.
Okay.
So we can, while Madam Clerk makes the copy, if you want to address other issues while we waiting for her.
It was asked about how do we put the festival on? Sponsors. Treasure Chest Casino, they love to partner with the community, and they were wonderful. They stepped up to the plate and said, we want to be your gold, I think it was a diamond sponsor is what they were. And the Jefferson Parish Convention Center, they did a big sponsorship, and they actually, instead of giving the money, they paid off advertising for us. So we didn't actually get the funds, but they paid the bills for us, so that was great. Sponsors, well, I don't have my paper in front of me now, but the sponsors, it was amazing how many people, once they received letters, that responded with checks for the event. And they've also told us, please send us your letter in January, because most businesses now allot their donations in January. So they want us to go ahead and send them their letters now for next year. So we will be doing that. I don't want to quote figures because I need my
Yeah, I
paperwork.
wouldn't want you to do that either.
Do you have any questions, though?
I guess my question and comment is, I've received during the week from a couple of people a request for us to find out from a legal standpoint, is it legal to be able to charge parking at city property? And I think I forwarded my information to the legal department, asking them to look into this, so we will be able to make sure we're doing the right thing. Not accusing anyone. We've done many events in South Kenner and Rivertown, and I'm sure we've done them in North Kenner. But since the question was asked, I think it's our due diligence to find out exactly what the status should be. So we will be doing that to find out as it relates to any nonprofit, any group, not just your organization.
Right. But I
Councilwoman
do know at many of the events now at the Pontchartrain Center, they are charging, and they are charging $5 to park.
And I guess this will cover all of that. Councilwoman Pistola, you have the floor, sir.
I just wanted to thank you, Ms. Yadon, and all of your group of volunteers. I mean, you guys worked tirelessly, and it was, to say it was anything other than successful would be crazy. I mean, it was unbelievable, and I think surpassed everyone's expectations at how successful it was. I mean, and it's definitely the result of the work you guys did for, I guess, months. I don't even want to guess, but I know it was at least months, and it absolutely showed. So thank you all for everything.
Thank you.
And anything we can continue to. I was proud to be one of the sponsors for it, and thank you guys for everything y'all did to put that event on. And please make sure we have space next year.
Thank you. Actually, we had 4 months to put this on. When we first started, we were kicking around dates, and then we said Labor Day was the day we wanted to do it, and 4 months to put it on. We had, everything went off with no problems. We had a lost child for, I think, 3 minutes, and one person who said he had heat stroke, but they took care of him. He was fine. Sponsors, we had $83,555 in sponsorships. The festival, we had food booths, $4,350 worth of vendors. The revenue that we took in at the festival for our first year, now that was selling beer, soft drinks, and Tito's hard vodka is what we had a booth. $26,195.75 for the first year. So I was excited with that figure. I don't know about anybody else, but I was excited that that many people came, and I think they estimated 15,000, almost 15,000 people showed up, which was great. Do y'all have the?
I think
y'all have the copies?
I think she has the copies.
I can tell you right now, with any event, it takes you a good 2 months to get all your bills, all your payments, your credits from different vendors. Like Southern Eagle, I still haven't gotten a credit back for them for the beer that we didn't use. So probably in the next month, I'll have final totals. But right now, we're showing a profit of $54,844.95. Now, I don't know if you just want me to read through all this, or if you want to ask me certain.
No, if you can summarize it, you've already said that
Right.
the quantity we've raised, 83,000 plus. You
Right.
mentioned the number of sponsors.
Right.
So if you can just break it into segments, that'll be fine. Not to read through the whole report.
Okay. I mean, excuse me. The non-food vendors, though, we didn't have enough. You know, that was like crafters. That was only like $800. But if you go down on the like reimbursement, everybody asked about, you know, Jefferson Parish promised us $50,000, and it was a reimbursement type thing. We gave them, once I paid for something, I sent those the paperwork into Jefferson Parish, and then they sent a check. So that was $50,000. City of Kenner has reimbursed me $34,883.14. Now, I do have all the paperwork that backs up what they paid for, what they reimbursed me for, rather. So if you need to know that, I do have those figures here, too. Let's see. The performers, of course, was some of the biggest things. $67,905 for the acts that we had. The acts are, I didn't realize how difficult. I figure you just booked them. And then when you get their contracts, and then their riders of what they want in their dressing rooms and things like that, then you learn, maybe we should all start singing, I don't know. But down to what kind of gum they wanted. So that was a learning experience there. Equipment rental was mostly generators, and so I would hope when we do something back in Lake Town that we keep in mind the power that we need back there, because I did rent a lot of generators. Didn't know what they were. All I know, they had to whisper, and I didn't know what that was. And they had to be 125 Ks. All I know, it was a big generator. Let's see. Insurance, that was $3,408 for insurance of the festival. We were very lucky that it was only that amount. My insurance company that I deal with on a regular basis, I felt to the last day, we were dealing with insurance. You know, the riders with the entertainers, and I had $1 million, they wanted $2 million, so it was a constant bargaining back and forth. So we were lucky that the insurance was only $3,400. You see the second page, you see every check that I wrote for everything is on that page, next 2 pages. And then you'll see deposits, the vendors, you'll see everyone who were the sponsors on one of the pages here, that equaled $83,550 were all the sponsors. And anybody knows of anybody else who would be willing to sponsor, I'll take their names. Then you have the non-food vendors, donations. The donation, I wasn't quite sure where to put that donation. $16,000, it came from the Kenner City events. I put it as a donation, so when you see that, that's where that money was from. Other than that, we're just going to leave it as a donation. It could have been as a sponsorship. I guess I could have listed it as a sponsorship, but it still was a donation. And then you'll see on the last page, $20 was for a T-shirt. T-shirt sales were wonderful. They loved the material. If you all didn't get one, I can sell you one for $5 as a discount. Any questions about any of the figures?
Thank you very much. It's the very last page. If you can just go through the profit and loss by category to the bottom line.
Okay.
Since, you know, and that'll pretty much wrap it up.
Okay.
And all the other information, the backup information you see that you have, since this is a public record, to gather all that, to submit this with the report, I think that'll be sufficient, and anybody who would want to look at it, all the information would be there.
Well, in the next month, what I'll do is I'll have the final report, because like I said, I'm still waiting for some people to send me some bills, some credits. I'm still getting sponsors' money. So I'm hoping to have a good amount of money in the account for next year. All the monies are in a separate account, and it's going to be used strictly start up for the festival next year.
Thank you. So if you just go over the last page, I think we'll be, just show the different
Which
categories.
page is that?
That would be page, well, it's the very last
I
page.
think it must have been my first
Profit
page.
and loss, profit and
That's
loss.
what I was talking, the first
Okay,
page, I
you
was
already-
talking about that.
Okay,
That's where I was getting the figures from.
okay.
Any questions?
Okay, I don't see any lights for any additional questions. One, Councilman Segura, you have the floor.
Thank you. Ms. Gale. I say Ms. Gale because I don't. First off, as a member of the Italian Fest Board, who has been putting on a Italian Fest here in the city of Kenner, I just wish we were as successful as this event was in that short of a time. Believe me, it was great to be out there, going through and seeing all what you did. So I just want to keep you focused on that, because this is a good event, just like all the other festivals that we have, and I use my Italian Fest as an example. It has its purpose, and we welcome you and your friends of Rivertown continuing to do things to benefit the cultural aspect of our city and bringing people out to have a good time. So I'm glad you made a lot of money. I agree. I've been part of the decision on booking the bands, and I know what you're talking about when they want a certain product in
Yes.
their room and this and these different things, but that's that culture of their business. So keep up the good work, and next year, if the mayor gets our stage ready and built, we'll have an even bigger and better event.
Yes. Thank you.
So thank you.
And, again, I would like to just echo everyone here on the council. I think it was a fantastic event. I think for the first time for us to have that caliber of entertainment, for one thing, it shows that, we want to do things, top notch. And I think it goes along with the territory. I mean, this is the climate of the world today. People want to see, they want to see numbers, they want to see this, they want to see that. So you are better prepared now than you will be next year when we have it, to be able to be forthcoming without anybody having to ask, to be able to put it in different categories, to go forward for this event next year and other events. So we look forward to that event again next year.
Good. I certainly learned a lot.
Yes.
Going in, I wasn't too sure. I knew we could do it. I wasn't sure if I could do it, but I had an incredible team, and Chief, the police were excellent. My first goal was what's going on overseas. I don't need somebody driving through that crowd, and they jumped right on it, and they were wonderful. So I want to thank the police department, and I've had more police at my house in the last week picking up checks, and so my neighbors keep wondering what's going on, but I just want to thanks for the opportunity to do this. I also have two nonprofits here. The Kenner Rotary, Christina Wilson and Marcel from the KBA. They wanted to get up and just say a few words. They worked with us at the Freedom Fest, and I'm so lucky to have found them. They were having a little too much fun in the beer booth, so I'm not really sure. I don't think they were drinking there. Come on up, Christine.
Thank you. Mayor Zahn, would you want to wait till after the
I'll yield to the nonprofits.
name and address, miss?
My name is Christina Wilson, and my address is 629 Flurry Drive, Kenner, Louisiana.
Thank you.
So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Christina Wilson. I'm the president of the Kenner Rotary Club. It gives me great pride to walk down the hallway and see that Rotary Club sign on some of those older pictures from 1955. We did have a great time at Freedom Fest, and I want to thank the Friends of Rivertown, the City of Kenner, and Mayor Zahn for giving us the opportunity to raise some funds for our club. We work very hard to try and raise funds to put back in the community, and it was a fabulous thing for us. We were able to raise about $1,429. So that money goes to our club. We don't keep any of it. It goes completely back into the community, and we're looking forward to spending it. Now, year to date, and our year actually begins in July, we've already given some money to GT Woods Elementary for some school supplies. We've done an ice cream social at the Council on Aging, and we will continue to do things monthly, and this just helps us to do more and more for the community. And we really thank you for the opportunity, and we hope that we can continue to help in the beer booth, if that's where you want us, to continue to sell and try and make tips and take that money and continue to do good things here in Kenner.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the GT Woods and the Lincoln Manor community, thanks again for your support to the school.
Always.
Thank you. Mayor Zahn. Oh, name and address, sir.
Yes, sir. Marcel Lashover, 601 Vintage in Kenner. I'm the president of the Kenner Business Association. I thank y'all for letting us be a part of it. We had a great time, had a bunch of volunteers out there. We were the only booth, the water booth that had our own air conditioning. thanks to Joey LaBella, brought his big air conditioning unit. So that might be something to look at next year in some of the booths for, because it was hot out there. But we had a great time. I mean, the crowd was great. The crowd got thicker as it went along. We were running around doing a lot of stuff. So we were honored to be able to help our team, and our board was actually honored to come out there and help y'all with this event. So we'll be out there again next year if you have us. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Mayor Zine, you have the floor, sir.
Just in closing, I think this is what it's all about. As you see, that you have 3 nonprofits that are before you today explaining and commenting on how successful it was. I've always said that it's a way to showcase Lake Town, but look how much further it goes. Just besides Kenner getting showcased and Lake Town getting showcased, you see what it does? Money is winding up in the schools. If anybody has criticism of that, go ahead. I don't care. I'm going to stick with stuff that brings Kenner together. You bring the business associations, you bring the Friends of Rivertown, and bring the Kenner Rotary Club, just a few of the groups that came out there. I know it's popular right now, if you read in media, print, social media, to knock these festivals. But just so you know, when you look at Freedom Fest, Uncle Sam Jam, Family Gras, and Gretna Fest, they bring in close to, every year, 265,000 people. That's impressive. That's impressive. That's what people want. They want that. And for an event that cost us, because I was actually a little off on my numbers because I was picking up those numbers last council meeting as city money. Those were actually donations to the Friends of Rivertown. So when I said 34,000 last time, I stand corrected. It actually cost us 12,000 in tourism funds. Y'all know the definition of tourism funds. Tourism funds are hotel motel sales tax, basically, from people that visit the city of Kenner, and those monies go back into our coffers that we actually put out to showcase Kenner. And Councilman Segura, I think you probably brought up the best point. It cost us $88,000 for the stage and the lighting. Hopefully next year we don't have that cost. And the donations were around $83,000. I'm not saying we're going to make $83,000 next year, but what if we'd have had a stage already? We would actually have an $88,000 profit. Well, not us, the Friends of Rivertown. But let's see where that winds up. That winds up back in, like Kenner Business Association, Rotary said, back in our schools, and God knows where else that it goes. That's why we're doing these things. And I stand up for Uncle Sam Jam, which I've done in the past, Freedom Fest, which I assisted the Friends of Rivertown because they did all the work. Them and also, and I've said this before, Chris Fortunato and Mary Sharon Howland from my office did predominantly the work. But I stand up for all these festivals, including Gretna Fest, because I've had a discussion with Councilman Ricky Templet, who called me from the parish and said, what's this raid on our festival? I said, Ricky, I have no idea. I have no idea. But as they keep looking at these festivals, I want them to look at them for how productive it is for the city of Kenner and Jefferson Parish, Gretna, everybody involved, Lafayette Park, Family Gras. It's all good things that happen in the city. So my thank you to the Friends of Rivertown. I've thanked my staff already. Gail, your group and Kenner Business Association, Kenner Rotary, everybody who was involved, Councilman Jack Rizzuto, which I've given him praise numerous times on his help, which he used tourism funds also. Excellent job, great job. I can't wait for next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Impastato, you have the floor, sir.
One of the things that I think that hasn't quite been emphasized that I don't think we can forget is it's not just a money issue. It's not just a financial benefit to the city. Miss Wilson, who was talking from the Rotary Club, one of the things we saw from the different organizations, the nonprofits, the volunteer groups that participated, is their ability to showcase their organizations as well. There was a particular organization that wants to start their own parade group, if you recall, Mayor Zahn, who reached out to us to see if they could just have a display, just to advertise their organization. It was so successful, that the crew of LaSalle Group, that they've already reached out and asked how they can participate in the Diggity Dog Fest coming up next weekend. So that's a benefit to the citizens of City of Kenner as well, is the ability for organizations and community activist groups and civic groups to expand their membership and draw more people into volunteer efforts in the city of Kenner, that's a benefit that pays major dividends to the city of Kenner over and above money. And so I don't think that can be, I don't want that to get lost in the shuffle, because I think that's an additional major benefit to us.
Right.
And even to the Friends of Rivertown to understand, help people understand what you guys do. So for that reason, that's just an additional reason why it was super successful. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Greg?
Councilman Reno, you have the floor.
I just have one question right now, and the mayor, I didn't have any questions, and the mayor spoke and said $88,000 for the stage, but I'm looking at this sheet, and I don't see an $88,000 figure. So is that the $50,000 reimbursement from Jefferson Parish and the $34,000 from the city of Kenner?
I'm waiting
That
for
would be
their
a
final
question-
bill. I'm waiting for the final bill from the staging people.
Okay.
It's staging is lights and the stage and the lighting. I
Okay.
haven't gotten the final bill yet,
Okay, so
and it will add up to 88.
to 88,000, but I
Right.
don't, I mean, I see equipment rental, but I just didn't see an $88,000.
Okay. I didn't put the figure in, my accountant doesn't put the figure in until we actually get it and pay for it.
Okay,
So that figure is one, when I said in the next month, the numbers will change because I'm waiting for that bill to come in.
okay. And you will furnish us, the council, with
Right.
the final,
Final numbers.
fine, thank you, that's all.
Right, and that's going to be reflected in the report with the revision
Right.
for those numbers.
Right.
Thank
Those
you.
numbers are all reflected in
Thank
the
you.
next report. Okay.
No lights, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. At the request of the mayor, a presentation from Theater 13 LLC regarding the Rivertown Theater operations.
Again, I'll just turn my comments over to Theater 13. I thought it was the time to start looking at every city asset that we have and nonprofits that are doing things for the city of Kenner, for our constituents, just like Freedom Fest. This is something down the road in your district, Councilman. We've had numerous conversations about different city buildings in your district, and just get a hold on and get a report from all the groups. There'll be many more groups coming here from Rivertown, as you and I have discussed. We have a comedy club down there also. They'll probably be next. But just to find out what's going on, as we get the feeling from the Friends of Rivertown, let's get it from everyone.
Yes, it is. It is. And since we brought that up, we may as well start looking at all of it. So because there are going to be other conversations, other requests, so why not do it now? Name and address, sir.
My name is Gary Rucker, and my address is 4442 Ligustrum Street. And I'm with Mark Fushi, who's our bookkeeper.
And I'm at 109 Destin Lane in River Ridge.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you guys for having us tonight. We're really happy to be here and see all of you. We're passing around a packet. It includes a lot of information. It includes a financial breakdown at the end, some pictures, some press. We're going to really focus on one page of that and kind of read through it because it's where the information lies that I think you guys have asked for. So we'll focus on that. Of course, if you have any questions or need anything else explained, we're happy to answer anything you have. I'd like to open with a quote, if I may. It's something I'm very proud of. And this is a quote from, in May, we did a production of Bye Bye Birdie on the main stage, and this was a quote that we got. Since assuming management of the Kenner venue, producers Kelly Fushi and Gary Rucker have established a consistency and quality that fills the theater seats, pleasing audiences with each season. The current production continues that track record. Most theatrical producers would find it foolhardy to open a show against the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, which we didn't realize we were doing that, by the way. The fact, however, that Bye Bye Birdie played to sold-out houses throughout the second weekend of Jazz Fest speaks well to the level of support and trust that Rivertown Theaters for the Performing Arts has earned with its audiences. And I think that pretty much sums up what we're trying to do over at the theater. I'm going to turn it over to Mark so he could read through this first page, and I'm going to chime in every once in a while.
Hi. My wife says she's sorry she couldn't be here, but she's in Disney World riding Space Mountain for her birthday. But I do the bookkeeping for the theater, so it's perfect for me to be here. So since 2012, let's take a look at the first part. This is the reinvestment in the benefits provided to the city of Kenner by the Theater 13. Since 2012, Theater 13 spent $127,000 on the theater for renovations, improvements, and maintenance to the buildings, the courtyard, and equipment purchases. Things like we renovated the main theater lobby, the restrooms, the office space. There was a complete renovation of the whole second theater, the Lanyap building, the entire downstairs, a new stage, paint, lobby, bathrooms, everything. The planting and the upkeep of the courtyard and the fountain and the banners in the courtyard. It's a beautiful courtyard. And new theatrical equipment like lights and microphones, curtains, shop tools, etc. So just to note, all equipment that is bought becomes property of the city of Kenner. So anything that is used for putting on the shows, it becomes property of Kenner. Of course, there's $33,000 of annual sales tax revenue to Jefferson Parish. We attract 40,000 people to Rivertown every year from all over the greater New Orleans area, as well as a lot of out-of-town tourists that come from almost every state. If you look at the next page over, you'll see some maps of where everybody's coming from. We're lucky in that when people buy a ticket, they put in their address so we can see where we're attracting people from. Of course, all the way across greater New Orleans, all across the North Shore and Slidell, but then we have this whole smattering of people from all over the country that somehow find out about us when they come in town, and they have a good time. Let's see. We directly drive traffic to other Kenner businesses. For example, Gindusa's Italian Market. They can't keep up with the demand, and I believe he's opening up a second location across the street, which is great. Go ahead.
One of the things when Kelly and I assumed the responsibility of the theater, one of the things that was important to us was we didn't want to be an isolated business in that area. It was important that we all work together with the other businesses in that area. And since Gindusa's opened, it's been wonderful to be able to work kind of hand in hand with them. We're both really busy at the same time. And they've been really supportive of us. We've tried to be really supportive of them. And we're really excited to see that there are 2 new restaurants opening up in that area. So it just gives us a lot of faith that the Rivertown area is really, coming alive.
Children's theater and summer camps. We give kids opportunity to attend and participate in live theater. Later on in the packet, you can see some pictures from some of the children's productions that we've done. And field trip performances for several local schools. In fact, I think some of them get free admission, but then usually it's just they collect a small fee from the students for whatever their budget is for their field trip, and they come out during the day, daytime performances. So profits from all the children's shows are spent directly back into the theater improvements and equipment. We raise positive awareness of Kenner's Rivertown through the awards and press coverage. This past year, all 6 of the main stage shows were featured on the front page of the Times-Picayune Lanyap section, which you can see on another page in the packet, a little further out, a few pages further. And we're consistently featured in write-ups in the Times-Picayune, the Advocate, the Gambit, news segments on WWL and WGNO. We were named Theater of the Year by the Times-Picayune. We get Big Easy Awards every year from the, it's the Gambit, right? That puts on the Big Easy Awards. The theaters also act as a rental space, and we accommodate those rentals, like for dance studios, corporate meetings. We had a few Kenner Police fundraisers there, other theater groups, and we had the national MTV series Scream come in, and we accommodated them to film there for 6 months around the schedule.
One other thing, too, is in our contract, we agreed to provide so many, what they're called city days to Kenner, that they get to use the theater for free so many times per year. And I'm proud to say that, to my knowledge, we've accommodated everyone that's been asked of us. And that's something we're happy to do, is be able, it's not in the packet, but we like that when Kenner groups want to come in and use the space. It makes us really happy to be able to accommodate them.
Okay, so next is the benefits provided to Theater 13 by the city. Of course, the use of the 2 buildings and the courtyard. Kenner supplies maintenance for the major issues like HVAC, electrical, and plumbing. When the contract started back in 2012, there was a $35,000 utility credit because there was some major equipment that was faulty that needed to be replaced to start business there. I think it was sound equipment or
sound and lights, yeah.
Something like that, sound and lights. The management company before Theater 13, prior to 2012, they received an annual subsidy of $50,000 from City of Kenner, but that's no longer necessary. That was written out of the contract. And of course, that saves the city a good bit since then. And hopefully another benefit will be the roof repair for the theater, which I think has been an ongoing thing and I think is making its way through the city council just simply because water's pouring onto the stage during certain times and there's kids in there and there's people it's just a hazard, you know. Let's see. So as far as financial stability, so prior to Theater 13 taking over, there were 5 productions per year there with 45 performances, and the second theater was just in disrepair, and it was used as a buffet hall, basically, before the shows. Now we're up to 17 productions per year, 175 performances in both theaters. That includes 6 main stage Broadway musicals and comedies, 4 cabaret acts, 4 children's shows, 2 summer camps, and an annual fundraiser patron party we put on. So the revenue, the gross revenue from 2015 to 2016, let's see, from 14 to 15 increased 16%, then another 33% in 2016, and now we're projected to grow again another 20% for 2017. Last year was the first profitable year, net profit. Before that, really, most of any profit that was left over got spent back into the building. I mean, for the $127,000. We employ 2 full-time employees, 2 part-time employees, and have about, every year we have about 100 paid artistic staff that come in and out from all over the city and country. Some people come in from other cities. And we have been operating debt-free since the beginning, although there has been an outstanding Entergy bill that we have owed the city of Kenner. Last year, because we had the profitable year, all that profit went to pay $90,000 of that Entergy bill, and I believe there's still a little bit more, about $15,000 left to be paid. So that, the end of the packet, you'll see a complete listing of every piece of equipment, building improvement, and everything that was spent on the building for the city of Kenner since 2012. That totals the almost $127,000. You have anything to add?
That's it. Are there any questions for us?
Mayor Zahn, you have any?
One question is, we have an outstanding, that brought to my attention, an outstanding utility bill, still a balance. Are y'all close to wrapping that up?
Yes, sir, we are.
All right.
Yeah.
And then the city days, have we requested city days lately?
I'm not sure when the last one was. It was either the beginning of this year or the end of last year. But like I said, anytime a city day's been brought to us, we've accommodated it. So yeah, I don't know off the top of my head when the last one was, but I can find out.
How many do we get?
I think it's 10 per year, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's 5 per year. Yeah, 5. Okay.
And I think those are some of the things that we need to look at with the councilman in the near future, the city days, the availability of those city days. Just for the record, it is a city asset
Yeah.
that you are receiving for free. I know you're paying for the utilities. So that's the things we have to look at also. We do realize what it brings in, but leading to the question, where does that profit go now? To the employees?
The profit from the business?
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's a partnership, so my partner and I are entitled to it, but we never really take it. Like, for example, the main stage theater itself, that's the next project we have coming up because it needs to be painted. A lot of the vacuum form windows that were put up there are starting to crack, so that's the next project we want to take on. It's just going to be a pretty expensive project, so we just haven't started it yet,
Okay.
but that's the next step.
Just a few things we'll have to get together with Councilman Carroll to look at for the near future, Councilman.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Reno, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gary, so basically, the theater is operating and investing the money, the profits that it makes, back into the building that the
Yes.
city owns.
Correct.
Right.
And prior to y'all taking over, the city was maintaining 100% of the building and was putting up $50,000 to offset the facility, in
Correct.
addition to maintaining the building.
That's correct.
So currently, the city gets no revenue from the building, from y'all, but you're taking the profits that you make on your productions and investing them back into maintaining the building.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, according to the original contract, it only requires 5% of the net profit to be spent, but it's way over that. Like, it's 100% for many years, and spent right back into the theater and the grounds and things like that, yeah.
Our thing is, if it doesn't look nice, if it's not a welcoming place, and if people don't want to come there, they're not going to come there. None of us got into the theater to be rich. You know, we love what we do. We love the space. We always say we didn't want to run a theater. We wanted to run the Rivertown Theater. That's what we wanted to do. So that's our passion, and we want to make sure that everybody who walks through that door has the best experience they can possibly have. And if that means taking money that the theater's bringing in and putting it back into the theater, then that's what we're going to do.
And actually, the city is making money off of this because of the sales tax revenues that not only that you generate, but that are generated by other businesses. And you mentioned Genducis, so I'm just going to use them as an example because you mentioned it. Their sales tax revenues also. So it is a big plus for the city in y'all providing the entertainment that y'all provide in that facility. The city's getting their building fixed, and we're receiving increased tax revenues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Segura, you have the floor.
Thank you. And again, Gary, that,
Yeah.
at Councilman Reynolds' request, when I first took over as mayor, and
Yes.
I came out there and saw the problem with the building and tried to get the roof fixed as quick, but I understand it's in our capital budget and it's being.
Yeah, we know they've assured us that steps are being taken, and we feel good about that.
Several of your performances there, and I appreciate the work y'all do. As Councilman Rayner was alluding to, yes, you do put back into the community, as well as we've just heard from Ms. Gale with her Freedom Fest, how it put back into the community, as well as every festival that is put on in the city of Kenner that is helpful to put things back into the city. So yes, there's no question that we all appreciate that effort. But just for your accountant, though, I just want to make one clarity question. As I'm going through your ledger of checks, the numbers are not in consecutive. There's big gaps in numbers. So is there checks that are being written that are not part of this
Oh,
report?
sure. Well, that's from, paying artists, vendors. Yeah, when you put on a show, you have to buy plenty of like props, costumes, set pieces, lumber, things like that. Sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Employee checks.
but did I hear you say that everything you buy becomes our property?
Correct.
So
Correct.
we don't know what else you're buying then?
Well, it's consumables, and so most of the costumes are rented. If there's a costume plot for, say, like the Little Mermaid that they just did, they rent it from a company and they ship them in. But if it's something like they have to buy 5 suits for something, well, those suits go into the costume room upstairs in the lanyard. They belong to Kenner, right? We do have an accounting of all that. I just didn't include it here. So I guess in a way, yes, it's more than the 127,000 that's here.
Oh, and the reason I'm just trying to follow this, because I know when Ms. Gale gave us her report, her check orders were fairly consecutive, so I was like, well, wait a minute.
Oh, there's plenty of money being spent on all these different vendors. There's, yeah.
So are we entitled to get that too? I
Oh,
mean,
sure.
Oh, okay.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Well then, yeah, I'd like to see that
Yeah, sure.
report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Mayor Zahn?
The notice to proceed on the roof did go out this week, so just so you know that. I don't know if you were notified of that. And I agree with Councilman Segura that, we need those numbers also, just like, Friends of Rivertown had brought to us, because while Councilman Raynaud does bring up some points, we are subsidizing close to $200,000. So, Freedom Fest cost us $12,000. You're costing us $200,000. So we want to make sure that we're getting all those numbers back like that. So I appreciate anything you can supply to us, just like the Friends of Rivertown just did.
We usually give financial reports, and the second quarter 2017 is still being put together by Duplanche. So we'll send that in as soon as it's ready.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe they have a backlog of all the other years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Klein, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. You guys are doing a great job at the theater. I've been to several performances there. They're great, they're entertaining, they're fun. The city supports the theater. We made some improvements. We want to make other improvements. I think I can speak for myself, but the other councilman and the mayor also, that we inspected the roof, and there's a number of leaks. It's in our budget, and we're going to get that done as soon as humanly possible so we can improve the theater that much more. So keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm going to say that, you know, based on other theaters across the New Orleans area and other places that I go, I think you guys are from a quality standpoint, up there with them. I mean, there is no second to that. Y'all do a fantastic job. And I think it's noted in all these magazines that you stated and people that come from New Orleans and all over. That's never the question. But there are some questions that I receive from the theater being in District 1, from the residents, from the civic groups, from the organizations. And it's never about the quality, never, never, never. But it's always about the amount of, it is a city building, they remind me of that it is a city building, the number of dollars that subsidize, or whatever you want to call it, for that building. And we mentioned the number of days that's accessible to the entire city, 70,000 plus people, 5 districts, 5 days. Now, I'm going to tell you personally, 5 days to me is not enough.
Well, we're only required to do 5 days, but if we had requests for 7 days and we could accommodate it, we're happy to do it.
Yes, and
We don't have a history of really turning anyone away, even anyone who wants to use the theater, unless it directly conflicts with one of our shows. But yeah, we're happy to open up. The police used to do their graduation there. We used to host that, which we love to do. So yeah, as long as the theater is available, we're happy to open it up.
Well, and that's my point. The policy is 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
So right now it's 5 days. If someone came on a 6th day and said we want to use it, well, you could always say, well, wait a minute, you had your 5 days. I understand if it's available, but if the 5 days something should be built in so it's more than 5 days, not being held to 5 days. And that is something that the mayor and I have been talking about, to revisit this contract or whatever, to ensure that the entire city are able to use to make it feel like it's theirs, because right now there is a sense that it's not ours, that is, we're here, somebody else
We'd love to meet with you and talk about that.
Just let me,
I'm sorry.
yeah. It's not ours, that we should have an opportunity to use it as I'm not saying when we want to, there should be some type of a schedule, but to limit us to 5 days, and I don't want to keep going back to that, is not enough. It should be something that we all sit down, revisit it to see how can accommodate. I know a number of groups within District 1 that have used it. You guys have been fantastic, but there are some, once we get to that quota of 5 days, that's where we are. We no longer can use it, and we have to work around other schedules. So we need to revisit that to see how we can incorporate more days, probably seasonal, to be able to say Christmas season, Easter season, Thanksgiving season, whatever, to be able to look at it so we all can share this facility that the taxpayers pay for, that you guys make a quality venue for people to come and see, that we all get the best that we can get out of it. So that's our input. That's where we need to go towards that, in that direction. So I look forward to that for the entire city, not only District 1, but all the districts and all the cities and all the civic organizations, to be able to use the facility and feel like it when they walk in, this is ours and it's not somebody else's. And I think that's fair.
Sure.
Okay, I don't see any more lights. Thank you, gentlemen. Unless you have anything else, we
No, thank you
appreciate
very
you
much.
coming today. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice
Bye-bye.
meeting you.
Yes, sir. That will conclude the consent agenda this evening. If I could get a motion in a second.
Motion by Councilman Wildenmont, second by Councilwoman DeFranchis to accept. Council, please vote.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Under the public appearance agenda this evening, we have item 9, public hearings for final passage. Item 9 is public hearings for final passage. Item 9A is a public hearing regarding summary ordinance number 12,289, an amendment to ordinance number 10,930, adopted June 18, 2015, approving the Louis Armstrong New Orleans International Airport North Terminal conditional use application and all related facilities and infrastructure in accordance with preliminary plans prepared by Crescent City Aviation Team located within the airport property boundaries of the City of Kenner in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, which property is zoned AHI, Aviation Heavy Industrial.
Is
If If I could get a motion and a second to open your hearing, please?
Okay, motion by Councilman Wilmot, second by Councilwoman DeFranchise to open public hearing.
Aye.
Please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0 to open your hearing.
And I think there's a presentation by Mr. Hebert.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. On June 8th, 2015, the City Council approved a preliminary site plan for the Louis Armstrong New Orleans International Airport's new terminal facility. On May 1st of this year, the New Orleans Aviation Board submitted a conditional use application with several changes to that site plan. Those changes include the following: the addition of a third concourse building measuring 62,108 square feet located along the west side of the terminal, a 365,900 square foot expansion of the paved aircraft apron to accommodate the parking of commercial aircraft for the new concourse, a 15-foot extension of the ground floor wall of the new terminal building, and the addition of 200 public parking spaces within the footprint of the North Terminal parking garage that was previously set aside for the airport's hotel site. A second supplemental environmental assessment was performed on behalf of the New Orleans Aviation Board and approved by the Federal Aviation Administration on April 13th, 2017, to determine any potential impacts related to the proposed changes. The results of the second supplemental environmental assessment determined that upgrades to the city's street system around the airport terminal will be needed in order to accommodate the new project's increase in volume of vehicular traffic that's generated by the new terminal. Now, the Federal Aviation Administration issued a finding of no significant impact and accepted the airport's second supplemental environmental assessment for the changes to the North Terminal. The assessment identified the Loyola Drive Veterans Memorial Boulevard intersection with a level of service D in the AM morning hours and a level of service F in the PM afternoon hours in relation to projected vehicle traffic flows. The City of Kenner and the applicant both agree that these level of services are unacceptable. The City of Kenner advised the airport officials that road improvements are needed in addition to the currently designed ground level road that leads to the airport's property line, for which Kenner does not have a funding source. The applicant has indicated a commitment to use its best effort in requesting, along with the City of Kenner, authorization from the FAA to expend airport revenues to assist the city in the necessary improvements to the roadway infrastructure in effort to improve the level of access and service for surface road connection to the airport's property. Also, the proposed changes will add approximately 12 acres of hard surface to the new terminal. A hydrology and hydraulics study was prepared on behalf of the applicant and reviewed by the city's drainage engineers. It was determined that the new airport pumping station located at the Jefferson-St. Charles Parish line has a capacity of 600 cubic feet per second, which is sufficient to handle the additional runoff. On December 9, 2015, the City of Kenner, Jefferson Parish, and the City of New Orleans entered into a memorandum of understanding regarding the purpose and operation of the applicant's new stormwater pump station. The city and applicant have established agreed-upon standard operating procedures, and that the new pump station will be monitored using an electronic supervisory control and data acquisition system. All duties of the applicant that are contained in the memorandum are made conditions of this conditional use application. Also, the construction contract for the applicant's project includes provisions of a maintenance of drainage plan. In addition, the contract requires the contractor to implement an erosion control plan. The applicant will actively enforce these requirements throughout the remainder of the project. With regards to landscape and buffering, the proposed landscape is concentrated predominantly around public access drive and public parking areas. Tree plantings occur along shared property lines near the entry drive and terminal to screen adjacent industrial uses from public view. The landscape plan includes 1,300 newly planted trees, with 503 of those trees being large maturing Class A trees. Also included are 4,517 shrubs and over 20,000 perennials. The proposed landscape plan has been determined to meet the minimum requirements of the city's landscape ordinance. And on June 23rd, the City Planning Commission recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Hebert, and I don't see any lights here, but before we call it to a vote, we actually have a couple of guests here today from the airport who are new in their position, the director and the CFO. If you ladies and gentlemen would like to come up just to introduce yourself, we would love for you to do that today. Thank you. Name and address, sir.
I'm Kevin Dolio, 3700 Orleans Avenue. Not being here that long, I had to think about that to remember my address, but 3700 Orleans Avenue, New Orleans. A 2.5-month-old aviation director for the airport.
Thank you.
Thank you. Henrietta Brown, 4301 Tulane in New Orleans, and 2 months.
Well, Mr. Dolio, Ms. Brown, we want to thank you guys for coming. It's only 2 months. We look forward to a long future. Mr. Dolio, you are originally from the city of New Orleans, and you left for a while, came back, so this is home to you.
It is, definitely.
You know how to get around. It won't be a problem for you. I'm not sure about Ms. Brown, but we've been hearing nothing but rave reviews. I have a number of my friends that work at the airport that is saying, things are going as planned, even though you wasn't here. They enjoy your personality. You and Ms. Brown love working with you. So we, the city of Kenner, look forward to working with you to ensure that this project, that the airport, because even though it's owned by the city of New Orleans, it is in the city of Kenner. So we need to be a partner with everything. So we look forward to that.
Absolutely, and I'm totally 100% on board with that. I am a partner, and I see you all as partners, and I recognize that the airport is located in the city of Kenner. Already started working to forge good relationships with Kenner administration, and that will continue going forward.
Yes, thank you. Councilman Segura, you have the floor.
Well, while I got him up here, then, Mr. Dolly, please explain, we obviously probably know, but for the sake of the public, what is the reasoning for needing this change? What caused it? What brought it on?
Yeah. What brought it on was the original planning for the new terminal facility was based on forecasted traffic going forward that projected a certain amount of need in terms of capacity in the terminal facility. Those forecasts, as we actually started moving through periods of time that those forecasts touched, we were tracking, because the airport's growing so fast, the region is doing so well, that it's producing traffic for the airport that goes pretty well beyond what was originally forecast for airport growth. So we had the forecast redone based on the actual recent history we had, and then projected forward from there. And it drove significantly higher forecasts out into the future, and drew demand for a bit more capacity in the terminal facility. So we had to adjust and add the 5-gate concourse in order to be able to accommodate the traffic we'll have when the facility opens, and to go forward a little bit with it as well.
Okay, now, maybe I can help with just a little bit plainer English. I think that says that in light of the time that we all participated in the groundbreaking and the forecast, as you said what you have, the city has, or the airport has now brought in new flights to England, Frankfurt.
True.
So those are the gut reasons that we need these additional gates, is to handle these new direct flights who are coming from all of these countries around the world.
Correct. And it's the added traffic that's driving it. That's true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dolio. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Motion by Councilman Wilmot, second by Councilwoman DeFrances to approve. Council, please.
Close public hearing first.
This would be
Okay.
Hearing.
Yes, sir. This is to close your
You're still in the
public
public hearings? Okay, motion by Councilman Wilmot.
Just check if anybody else wants to talk.
Not by the light.
No, he meant the audience.
Oh.
Hearing.
Anybody else in the public would like to speak on the airport, or even say hello to our new director and CFO? Yes, please come to the mic, name and address.
You don't want them to come after you later.
Yes. Good afternoon, Pastor Jackie Cockerham Brown. And I am adjacent to that airport. And you have people out there at 3:44 a.m. yesterday morning thumping. Last month, there was construction and noise. Let me give you my little time here. At 3:55 a.m., 4:03 a.m., 4:09 a.m., 4:13 a.m., and 4:34 a.m. when I finally went back to sleep. I think it is unfair to the residents that are located in that area, and even if they don't hear it or they're asleep, I'm not. I was awakened by the noise, even recorded the noise. And I'm very disappointed that even the council people, I've said this over and over again about the noise and the time that construction or work is going on. Right now, we have about a 10-foot, last month it was about 6 feet. Looks like it's about 10 feet now of the roadway that has been built or is being built with the concrete broken up, the dust and the cement particles coming in the area. And I'm still wondering, when will it stop at that time of morning? I understand construction has to go on. It has to take place. But it does not have to take place at that time of the morning. Anyone wants to comment?
Well, my comment would be that the city of Kenner have an ordinance that you cannot work before a certain hour, just like the garbage people have to adhere to and anybody else. So if they're not adhering to that ordinance, welcome to Kenner, Mr. Doolio, Ms. Brown. We would definitely have to talk about that to see about if that is happening, as you say, and to be able to address that with the contractors or even the airport employees.
Okay, because we've been through this before. We talked about this before right here. I spoke about it. So the ordinance needs to be enforced.
Correct.
And you know it's happening.
We believe
Why
you.
isn't it?
We believe
why
you.
hasn't it been enforced?
Well, I'm just saying, it's like any ordinance, any stop signs are meant to stop, but people don't always stop at the stop sign. So I think it's something you have to revisit each time when it raises this evil head to be able to address it. So it's not like we've forgotten about it. The ordinance haven't changed, but we will revisit again. Mr. Doolio was here for 2 months to be able to address it. We want to thank you for bringing it to our attention. Councilman Segura, you have the floor.
Thank you. And to follow up, ma'am, I do appreciate your concern because I live close by also, just in a different quadrant than you. But if I could, Mr. Charlie Pertwee, you can come see us, please? Because we had this discussion on pile driving period, which was going on late at night. And as I seem to recall, you had commented to us that you would let us know when any nighttime activity was coming up so we could adjust or help out the public's understanding. Has anything changed with that?
Again, I'm Charlie Pruitt with HGBM. Nothing's changed with that as it relates to piles, because that's what we talked about before.
But
When we put
hearing-
together our plan, we had a night shift and a day shift, and we're doing apron paving work at night. And we do have monitors out for the noise at 580 feet away, which is about where the property is. And then we've monitored that decibels, and we are below what the industrial standard is.
Okay, I'm going to try not to, but I'm not comfortable with noise monitoring by the airport. In the noise buyout program, people were told 30 feet away, you don't have enough noise for us to buy your house out. We're going to buy the one across the street because they got too much noise. So I'm not comfortable with noise monitoring put on by the airport in that sense. But I yield to Councilwoman DeFrances maybe this question, because I know she went through a lot of these meetings with the airport before I was on the council. Was there an understanding that we were allowing them to work at night?
No.
Okay, so how is it that you have a night shift working?
Well, in the plan that we put together that had the numbers of trucks and all the work, it showed a day shift and a night shift operation.
Okay, well then I'm going to ask the administration if we can hold a meeting with y'all and we can revisit this so that we can get a better understanding as to what your plan of work is, so we can try to resolve these noise issues.
Yeah, it'd be fine, and I'd be more than happy to attend that meeting.
Thank you.
Yes, and the decimal reading are fine, but there's still the question of the ordinance itself, that you can't start before a certain time. So even with that, that is great, that's laudable, but we still have to adhere to the ordinance and the rules for the city of Kenner.
Yes, I understand that, so we will discuss that, set up a meeting, and be more than happy to talk through that.
Thank you.
Pastor, we're going to seek an answer to your question.
Councilman Wilmot, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just want to chime in a little bit because I do remember that meeting when you came. It probably was about 8 months ago, so if I'm not correct. Is that right? Roughly.
I've been back since.
Yeah. Well, I
to
remember you
that.
coming to that
Yeah.
meeting, and we supposedly addressed this issue to some extent with the airport. And I know we have some new administrative people at the airport, but this was a problem. And I remember you saying that it woke you up numerous times back then. And then they were supposed to address it, and they were supposed to send out notices to those, anytime they were going to have night work going on, they were going to canvass the area around where it was going to be noisy, and it was going to try and work with the people in the community. And apparently that's not happening. So I have some displeasure with that as well. We need to correct this, because if you're getting woken up that many times, it's not right. So we need to address that, and I'd appreciate any comment. If you can, that'd be great. Thank you, Kev.
Ms. Fauché.
I just wanted to.
Well, hold on. Mr. Dolio, go.
I just wanted to say I'll attend, I'll participate in that meeting as well, and we'll come to a resolution on it. We'll solve the problem.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Fauché, you have the floor now.
I've got his number and I believe him. He'll show up. I'm asking Ms. McGinnis, please, if you could get code to look at the issue both in terms of prior representations and prior contingencies, particularly any conditional use plans or anything else we have, and that legal take a look in terms of what our standard operating is. Then we'll schedule a meeting, make sure that that Pastor Brown is aware of it, and come up with another plan. It may be that we've had a plan and it's just not been enforced, but one of the most important things is for you to let us know, let code know. Code enforcement is the body within the city that actually does that enforcement. So we will put that meeting together, Councilman, and make sure that you're aware of that meeting, and then report back to the council as a whole.
Thank you. Councilwoman DeFrances, did you have the floor?
Thank you. We had a meeting earlier with Mr. Dolio, and one of the things I pointed out, Councilman Carroll, is that you and I, along with the CAO and others from the City of Kenner, New Orleans, had many, many meetings with the airport. And I found those meetings, as I mentioned earlier, very productive, because we were able to address problems such as the one that was just brought to us today and in the past. We were able to address those problems because of those meetings. Those meetings stopped quite a while ago. And when I brought it up at a meeting in the mayor's office, I mentioned to Mr. Dolio that I thought we needed to resurrect those meetings because, as I said, they were very productive. We were able to address a lot of problems, and we resolved many of them. And he agreed that we would start those meetings again, and I'm sure, Councilman Carroll, you and I would be delighted, would we not, to go back and
Yes.
continue to work on them. And Councilman, Wilmot, if you would like to be included, you mentioned that, we would be delighted to have you come with us as well. I will address the problem that Councilman Segura brought up. We never gave permission for night work. That was not one of the topics that came up at the meeting. That's number one. Number two, when we talk about monitoring, we're not talking about night work monitoring and noise monitoring. What we were talking about was the following, that so many feet away at, where houses are located, you wanted to measure the amount of noise and amount of vibration and other things that impact those homes to make sure that there was no damage nor excessive noise to those homes in the area. But that was during the day, not at night. So if confusion arose, that confusion needs to be, again, immediately put aside, addressed, and make sure that we don't continue to ignore those problems. And so I feel very confident with Mr. Dolio, again, being so cooperative, willing to resurrect the meetings that we need to do, and other councilmen involved, that we will be able to quickly address that problem now.
Now, as you speak about monitoring the problem, is someone going to give me a sonogram? Sonogram. It monitors sound. Do I need to have one? Because who's going to be out there monitoring at 4 a.m. in the morning?
Well, that's my point. They're not supposed to be there at 4 a.m. in the morning.
Exactly. That's
They have-
exactly.
What he said earlier is they have equipment that they place that pick up the sound and record it. So
So do I get one?
I don't know to say you get one.
I'm just asking.
Councilman Wilmot, you have the floor.
I just wanted to say, first off, Mr. Dilio, I appreciate your meeting with us the other day, and I appreciate the way you handle yourself, and I look forward to attending this meeting, and I'm sure it's going to be worked out well. So, Pastor Jackie, I think that I'm looking forward to having some resolution for you, and I'm sure with the director, that's going to happen. So,
Will I be invited to the meeting?
I would like to be as well. So just please put us both down.
Well, we're going to have to figure this out because 2 district councilmen would like to be there, and if the 2 at-largers are going to be there, we'll have to figure this out.
I'll
Yeah,
be in
we
the
need to.
audience.
We need to. But
The
I'd
other,
like to-
the other statement that I'd like to make is that in the process,
I just know what
in the process of the meetings, when you have it for the public again, since we weren't always notified at in a timely manner, that you not do circuit conversation, like someone over here is talking and another group is over there and another group. It would be more effective for the people in any planning that we do if we could do it together, because there are too many different, I guess, too much information that's going on that's not heard unless you do it in a group setting. I think basically the information that I received during the airport, when you all first came around, was good at first, and then you started separating the people and the information. And I don't think that's a good idea, since I am running for councilwoman in 2018 in this district. So I would like to meet everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. So it was a lot of information. Like I said, we will be meeting again to address the concerns for the entire community, not from a political standpoint, but from a standpoint for the community. And this is for everyone to be able to ensure that the quality of life in the city of Kenner is for everyone. And we look forward to working with Mr. Dolio and Ms. Brown, the airport, the administration, and everyone.
Move to close public hearing.
To close, motion by Councilman Wilmot, second by Councilwoman DeFranchis to close public hearing. Council, please vote.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0 to close your hearing. Now on approval, please.
To accept, motion by Councilman Wilmot, second by Councilwoman DeFranchis to accept. Council, please vote.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0 to approve. Item 9B is a public hearing regarding summary ordinance number 12,290, an ordinance approving a conditional use for a daycare center on Lot M-2A1, South Lake Villages, Section 3, Kenner, Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, which property is zoned R1, single-family residential.
Motion by Councilman Impastato, second by Councilman DeFranchis to open a public hearing. Aye.
Motion
Is-
passes 7-0 to open your hearing.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this subject?
Mr. Hebert.
Council President, I have a presentation to give.
Thank you, Mr. Hebert.
The owner of the property is Divine Mercy Roman Catholic Church, located at 4337 Salentini Parkway, Kenner, Louisiana. The applicant is FLWB Architects on behalf of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton School, located at 1404 Greengate Drive, Covington, Louisiana. Lot M2A1 fronts the west side of Sal Lentini Parkway and is generally bounded by Joe Yini Boulevard to the north, Cotton Bayou Lane to the south, and West Loyola Drive to the west. Property zoned R1, single-family residential. The area around the lot is also predominantly zoned single-family residential. A conditional use application was submitted to the Planning Department for the operation of a child daycare center. The daycare center will be located in what is identified on the site plan as the Administration and Daycare Building. The building will be located west behind the existing church. The daycare center will include 4 daycare classrooms, each with a maximum occupancy of up to 23 children. The daycare will also include miscellaneous support rooms. Based on the maximum capacity of 92 children, a minimum of 3,220 square feet of dedicated indoor instructional and play space is required. A total of 7,189 square feet will be provided. Also, a minimum of 6,900 square feet of outdoor fenced-in play space is required. 6,900 square feet will be provided. A new 8-foot-tall wooden fence will be provided along the south and west sides of the site that abut South Lake Villages and University City subdivisions, respectively. The applicant also proposes a 4-foot-tall metal fence around the perimeter of the daycare's dedicated outdoor play area. A minimum of 21 off-street parking spaces are required for the daycare center. 50 spaces will be provided adjacent to the daycare's south entrance. A dedicated core lane for daycare drop-off and pickup will also be provided along the south side of the building. The core lane will also include a canopy to protect against inclement weather. Overall, the proposed daycare center meets the criteria of Section 6.05E1 of the Unified Development Code for child daycare centers in the R1 district. On August 23rd, the Planning Commission recommended approval.
Anyone want-
Councilman Segura, is this from last time? Anyone,
The public hearing, the public.
anybody in the public would like to address this subject? Yes, please come up. Name and address, sir.
My name is Ken Sprague, 1404 Green Gate Drive, Covington, Louisiana. I'm the Executive Vice President for the firm of FLWB Architects. The only thing I'd like to add is the reason for the conditional use. The zoning for this property allows the construction of a school on this site. The current St. Elizabeth Ann Seton has an early childhood care program. They'd like to bring it to their new campus, and to do that, we need the conditional use for that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Councilman Impastato, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Sprague, just to clear up, I know at the planning and zoning hearing on this, I heard from some constituents that where there was a little bit of confusion. This, to be clear, and so anybody who might be watching, I want to make sure they understand, this is not for the construction of the school as a whole, correct?
That's correct.
This is just to now allow the use of the facility, not just as a school, but to add daycare usage as well, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so, and does this have any impact on drainage and the other issues from what was already intended with the building of the school?
No. I mean, we've met with the city as well as the parish to review all of the drainage ordinances and so forth about stormwater runoff, and we've complied with everything that was required of us.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sprague.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Name and address, miss.
Christina Wilson, 629 Florey Drive. I just have a comment. You know, I grew up in Kenner. When I was a child, there were not capacity for me to attend school. And I've raised my children in Kenner, and there are not enough daycares to accommodate the children who need it. So if there's any impact on that, to make a decision, I think that having a child go to a daycare facility adjacent to a school and have that growth go from beginning to end, I think there's just nothing but benefit for that. So just a comment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, motion by Councilman Impastato, second by Councilwoman DeFranchise to close the public hearing. Council, please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0.
Motion by Councilman Impastato, second by Councilwoman DeFranchise to accept. Council, please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 10 is opening of bids. We have none. Item 11 is reclassification of zoning for final passage. Item 11A is summary ordinance number 12,285, an amendment to the City of Kenner's official zoning map, ordinance number 11,062, the Unified Development Code adopted on March 17, 2016, more particularly rezoning Lot 3B, Square 278, Highway Park Subdivision, Kenner, Louisiana, from C2 General Commercial to SI Special Industrial. Mr. Chairman, the Planning Department has a presentation this evening.
Mr. Hebert.
Thank you, Council President. The applicant owner is Louis A. Sotomayor, with an address of 1109 Williams Boulevard, Kenner, Louisiana. Lot 3B fronts along the I-10 service road and is generally bounded by 30th Street to the north, Williams Boulevard to the east, and the Duncan Canal to the west. Lot 3B consists of 23,319 square feet and currently contains a Cox Communication service call facility. Lot 230A1, located to the north, and Lot X1B1, located to the west, are zoned general commercial. Both lots are governed by Special Ordinance 11,104, adopted June 2nd, 2016, that approved a planned unit development of a CarMax automotive sales and service facility. Lot 234A1B, also located north, is Zone C2 General Commercial. Lot X1A, located to the west, is also Zone C2 General Commercial, but is designated by the Federal Aviation Administration as Airport Runway Protection Zone. A research of the property's zoning history indicates that from 1957 to 1977, the property was zoned for residential use. In 1978, the property was rezoned to general office, and again in 1996, it was rezoned C2 to C2 General Commercial. The surrounding area primarily includes property zoned general commercial. Therefore, the proposed rezoning of special industrial would be considered a spot zoning of land. Lot 3B is located between the Lamarque Ford Automotive Dealership and CarMax, which is currently under development. Automotive sales dealerships are permitted uses in both the C2 and the SI districts. The closest residential subdivision is Lincoln Manor, which is located west of Duncan Canal. The City of Kenner's adopted land use plan, land use map designates the area as general commercial, which is intended to provide suitable locations for general retail and service establishments. Now, on July 26th, the Planning Commission recommended approval. The commission contended that although the proposal would be a spot zoning of property, that due to its location adjacent to the airport's runway protection zone and in between two automotive dealerships, the rezoning of Lot 3B to special industrial would have no negative impact on the surrounding area.
Thank you, Mr. Hebert. Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Klein to accept.
I want to speak.
Oh, Councilwoman DeFranchise, you have the floor.
I just want to make a
Out of
small-
curiosity, if I moved on it, should I open
There's no
first?
public hearing for this, is it?
It's not a public hearing.
No, it's not a public hearing.
It's not a public hearing.
Did you press first? I'm sorry if you acknowledge me.
I don't see your name up here if you did.
Well,
Go ahead,
okay,
Councilman
procedurally,
Segura. I don't have a
usually the
problem.
one who moves gets to speak.
But I didn't know you
first,
wanted
but-
to. So go ahead. Councilman Segura, you have the floor.
Okay, no
I
problem.
don't have a problem.
As Mr. Hebert just gave his report, at the tail end, there was the clear point that says that, yes, there was a question of, was this going to be perhaps a spot zoning, which we tend not to try to do, but the fact that is in between commercial zones that are allowing, because of their special PUDs or conditions, that allow entities to operate businesses that would be in a SI zone if they were zoned that way. So all we're doing is really just allowing a piece of land that's sort of bordered by these other SI uses to change that property to SI and get the benefit of that also. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman DeFranchise, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just want to make a couple points. I'm not against this project. I want to make that very clear. I have one small problem, and I spoke to the mayor prior to this meeting, and that is, actually, Councilman Segura actually touched on it, and that is that the two adjacent properties could have been rezoned to SI. They were not done. I guess that I would think that the reason it wasn't done was they didn't think it was absolutely necessary to do that in order to have this conditional, to change this small piece of property to SI. The only problem I have is because those changes weren't made, that it is not contiguous with any SI property. And because I don't have a problem per se, and I wish a certain procedure had been followed to change the whole area to the same zoning, I have a qualm about voting it voting on it and approving it. But I'm not against it either. So for that reason, because I understand that it is not inappropriate, I will be abstaining on this issue.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Reno, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of rezoning this is for what, Mr. Hebert? Because there's an existing building, warehouse building, and it's currently being used, I believe, by Cox Cable.
In the cover letter that I believe was part of the packet that the council received, it just indicated that it was to use, to provide the best possible use of the land. Anything beyond that, I'd recommend speaking with the applicant.
So we don't know what the reason for doing a spot zone in this area?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Segura to close.
Thank you. Again, as has been reported, it is just to allow this property owner to get the best possible use of his land, considering what is going to be around his land in the similar type of businesses that have SI capabilities. So all we're doing is allowing his land to be in conformity to what will be used for the land around him. So with that, I don't have any problem as a district councilman, so I would ask all councilmen to please consider supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. We not see any more lights. Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Klein to accept. Council, please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Mr. Chair, excuse me? Mr. Chairman, motion passes 5-1. Councilmember Reno is opposed. Councilmember DeFrances has abstained. Item 11B is summary ordinance number 12,286, an amendment to the City of Kenner's official zoning map, ordinance number 11,062, Unified Development Code adopted on March 17, 2016, for more particularly rezoning Lot 46A, Centani Subdivision, Kenner, Louisiana, from R2 Family Residential to SI Special Industrial.
Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Reno to accept. Council, please vote. Presentation again?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hebert, presentation.
Thank you, Council President. The owner of the property is Forbes Fleet Service, located at 831 Hollandy Street, Kenner, Louisiana. Lot 46A fronts the east side of Centani Lane and is generally bounded by Kenner Avenue to the north, Reverend Richard Wilson Drive to the south, and Hollanday Street to the east. The lot consists of 6,245 square feet and is currently undeveloped. The lot is located at the northernmost portion of Centani Lane, where it dead ends at the Illinois Central Railroad line. The area of land located around Lot 46A is primarily zoned special industrial and R2 two-family residential. Lot 32A is located adjacent to the south and split zoned R2 two-family residential and SI special industrial. The lot is owned by Forbes Fleet Service. Lot 44A is located adjacent to the east and is zoned special industrial. The lot is undeveloped and also owned by Forbes Fleet Service. The property west of Centani Lane is governed by Special Ordinance 10,874, adopted March 5th, 2015, which approved a planned unit development of the East Jefferson Levy District's administrative complex. A research of the property zoning history shows that Lot 46A has been zoned R2, two-family residential, since 1957. Now, much of the land around Lot 46A, particularly those lots to the south and west, were previously purchased by the airport through the FAA's noise abatement program. Over the last 2 years, much of the airport buyout property in the vicinity of Lot 46A has been sold by the City of New Orleans under FAA regulations cannot be redeveloped for residential use. Also, the land north of Kenner Avenue is designated by the Federal Aviation Administration as Airport Runway Protection Zone. The city's land use map designates Lot 46A and the surrounding area as mixed-use non-residential, which is intended to provide suitable locations for compatible non-residential land uses in close proximity to the airport. The proposed rezoning of Lot 46A from R2 to SI Special Industrial would be consistent with the future land use map of the city's comprehensive plan. On July 26, the Planning Commission recommended approval. The commission contended that given that Lot 46A is located at the edge of a dead-end street directly south of the Airport Runways Protection Zone and that much of the surrounding land was previously designated as airport buyout property, it is unlikely that the proposed rezoning of the property to special industrial would negatively impact the surrounding area.
Thank you, Mr. Hebert. Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman DeFrances. You have the floor.
What was your motion, sir, please?
Councilman DeFrances.
Carol DeFrances?
No, she wants to speak on it before we vote.
No, what is your motion on the legislation?
Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Reno.
Thank you.
Councilman DeFrances.
Thank you. This is going to be very quick, I hope. 46A is contiguous to 44A, as you can see, which is special industrial. Since it is contiguous, there is no reason why it couldn't be changed to special industrial. However, Mr. Hebert, I do have a question about 32A since we're looking at this. Half of the property seems to be special industrial, and half of the property isn't. Shouldn't we be changing it, I mean, for the same property, to be zoned to, in part of it, as commercial and part of it is special industrial, doesn't make much sense. Shouldn't we look at that as well, to have some kind of uniformity on one piece of property?
Should we? The applicant should. and
Well, the
applicant
applicant,
has.
I would think, would want to do that. I think
Right.
for the good of his own good, because I think it would be much more beneficial to him, and also for the city, because I think this makes it very confusing for most people. And if you want to develop it, it's much more difficult. But as I said, the reason I believe in this case that I can, actually vote on it is because it is contiguous. And I would hope that maybe the developer would also look at 32A and make it uniformly one. Thank you. I'm finished.
Okay. Councilman Reno, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. The other airport buyout property that's in this area would all have to be rezoned. It cannot be developed as residential, is that correct?
That's correct. Property that was purchased through grants with the FAA under the noise abatement program cannot be reused. As far as we know, it cannot be reused for residential purposes.
And when we did the new UDC, and we talked about some zoning changes which were done, was that part of looking at this property here?
We sure did, Councilman. Approximately, if memory serves me correct, about 3 or 4 years ago, the administration at the time looked at rezoning property in South Kenner, south of Airline Drive, and then in Councilman Segura's neighborhood as well. We had put together proposed recommendations for rezoning the property with permitted uses and development guidelines. There were, if I remember correct, there was one public meeting that was held in Council District 2, one that was held in District 1. Unfortunately, there was no consensus on the actual proposed rezoning. And so at that point in time, the administration's unwritten policy was that they would simply, they would look at development as it occurred, perhaps,
Okay.
rather than rezoning the property.
Okay, but again, I just want to clarify that all of the property in that area that is airport buyout property would have to be rezoned because the city would not allow residential building in that area. Is that correct?
Either rezoned, or they could perhaps come through as a planned unit development or conditional use, just depending on the circumstances that would be involved.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. And Mr. Abel, you're correct. We're at the meeting. Councilman Reno, you're correct also about it not me. The only way it possibly could change again if there's another study that the airport, the FAA chose to do to change it. Until that happens, it is the study that they did is what we have, what we're living with right now. So it can't, but if there's another study that talks about the different decimals for the airplanes and a number of things, it could be. But we haven't had that conversation with the FAA or the airport recently. Mayor Zahn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council Chairman. I have a question, I guess, for my own planning department. I'm trying to figure, go back to the other slide that you had. If the other one is considered spot zoning, explain to me how this one would not be considered spot zoning.
A spot zone is when a parcel is zoned separate or differently from the surrounding properties. In this situation here, the applicant is proposing to rezone the property special industrial. As you can see, adjacent to the property line, you've got a piece of property zoned special industrial. It's not a spot zoning.
But next to it is special ordinance in the gray?
Yes, sir.
So
to the west.
What would that be in the future, whatever the council decides, through a PUD?
The area that's in gray was approved by special ordinance. It approved planned unit development for the East Jefferson Levy District's administrative complex.
Do y'all still recommend approval or not to the Planning and Zoning Board? I served on there for about 8 years. I remember those days when you did.
The UDC now only requires that recommendation of the Planning Commission. Well, actually, the CZO as well did provide the Planning Commission provides a recommendation to the City Council.
The Planning Commission, but when you go before the Planning Commission, you do or do not recommend approval or not?
If they ask us verbal, we'll provide a verbal recommendation.
And what did you do on this one?
They didn't ask us, but it meets all the criteria for rezoning.
Just like the last one did?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councilman Segura, are you this from last time or?
Oh, no.
Okay, Councilman Segura, you have the floor.
Okay, well, I think the mayor took a little bit of what I was also trying to clarify, but let me expand a little bit. When a process for a development of a piece of land goes through special ordinance, what did you keep?
Special ordinance?
And perhaps a PUD.
Yes, sir.
The components in there could be special industrial for what it's going to be used for. So when we approve a special ordinance or a PUD, we are technically approving special industrial use.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, well then, that's the clarity that we're trying to get to, that just because it's not having adjoining property, it can be a PUD that's going to be used for special industrial. We just don't call it special industrial. So if somebody else then next to it wants to later change their zone to special industrial, it's not spot zoning because there is a special industrial use next door.
The PUDs, basically, you're talking about uses, you're not talking about zoning. In most cases, you'll have an underlying zoning district. PUD comes into play, such as well as a conditional use, when it comes to how the property itself is being used. And so,
But if it's not being used for what that existing zoning said it was being used, that's the purpose of the PUD, to allow it to be used in a zoning capacity that it can be.
absolutely, due to unique circumstances, the size of it, the nature of the use, its intensity, absolutely, you can.
Okay, make sure I was clear on that. Now, just also to reinforce what Councilman Reyno was saying, yes, I sat in through that public meeting that was put on when the planning department was proposing some new zoning criteria. What was it, A1 or A2 or something like that?
Both.
I'm sorry?
Both.
Yeah,
It was
that's what-
A1 and A2.
the names were correct. I couldn't remember, A1, A2. So that A2 was for my area, A1 was presumably for South Kenner, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with that study and that need to try to envision what to do with that airport buyout land that they deemed could not be used for residential use anymore, and we were going to honor that, which is, I presume, like a covenant on a land. It's a deed restriction. So those two zoning criterias, as you said, did not get any consensus, so there was complete disarray as to what to do with them, so they were put aside and not put forth to the council, where the council voted to approve or disapprove, correct?
That's correct.
So as we stand right now, those properties are R1 zone. Cannot do anything but sit there as R1 until it goes through the process and comes back here to be changed to a new type of zoning.
That's correct. R1, in this circumstance, it's R2.
Okay, so no permitting can be given to anybody by some sign of an ink pen that says you can go do this.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, just clarifying some points. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Reno, did you, this from last time, or your light's still up, so I don't know if...
Yeah, I would actually, I have one other question. I
Yes,
just
sir.
want to clarify.
Councilman Reno, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the first one was spot zoning, and this one is not spot zoning. Mr. Hebert.
You're putting him on the spot.
Yes, sir. In our determination, we consider the first one to be a spot zoning because it was separate from the zoning around it, which was C2.
Okay.
In this case, it's not.
I mean, I hate to put you on the spot, but I want
Okay.
clarification
All right.
because I'm voting on this. So I want to know when I'm voting, what I'm voting for. All right, thank you, Mr. President. That's it.
Thank you.
I'm not going to do that out loud.
To accept, motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Reno. To accept, council, please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 12 is other ordinances for final passage. Item 12A is summary ordinance number 12,288, an ordinance amending portions of Chapter 16 entitled Vehicles for Hire of the Kenner Code of Ordinances as per the ordinance contained herein.
Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilman Epistado. Councilman Segura.
Thank you. This particular legislation is the follow-up to what took over a year to do, which was accepting the TNC industry into the city of Kenner. And then as a result, at that meeting that we passed that legislation, the taxi industry still had concerns and issues as our regulations that were in place pertained to them, and then now did not pertain to the TNC industry. So I know particularly I promised, and I'll let the rest of the council members support that, but I remember getting a lot of shaking of their heads that they would support looking at the taxi industry regulations. So subsequently, work was done to bring forth some legislation, which was passed on, I think it was August 17th, that took away a considerable amount of regulations from taxi cabs that were been determined not to be enforced or needed to be put on the TNC. So that passed, but this piece of language was initially part of that legislation, but we agreed to remove it at that meeting and put it off to allow for more discussion with the City of New Orleans on the implementation of this. That came up at a second meeting. We deferred it again because the City of New Orleans had been kind of sort of literally underwater for a couple of weeks, and so they did not have the opportunity to speak to us. So since that meeting, I did have a meeting just yesterday with City of Kenner Council, City of New Orleans Councilman, Mr. Jared Bosich, to discuss this. Whereas there was some interest to work forward, there was some maybe not as encouragement that something could truly take place quickly. So we are still hoping to resolve this with the City of New Orleans, but the purpose of this legislation is to get that moving and get it in place, because it, particularly here, protects and allows the City of Kenner registered taxi drivers the ability to pick up at the airport, drive into the City of New Orleans, drop off that fare, and right now have to return to the city without a fare, but yet City of New Orleans taxis can come from New Orleans with a fare to the airport. They can drop off, they can get in the line, they can pick up a fare and go back to the City of New Orleans with that fare, so they get a round-trip fare. The TNCs can do the same, pick up from New Orleans, go to the airport, go back from the airport. So our taxis were at that disadvantage of not being able to have a return fare when they come back. So this language and this legislation is to try to correct that. So that is the intent here, and would hope that everyone joins me in supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I do not see any lights. Yes, Councilman Klein, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too agree with and support this ordinance, because I don't think it's fair to the taxi drivers of the City of Kenner not to be able to pick up a fare in New Orleans when, in fact, the New Orleans taxi cab drivers can pick up a fare in Kenner. You know, it takes at least 20, 30 minutes to come back from New Orleans out to Kenner, and they really should have a fare because they are using their automobile, they're using gasoline, wear and tear on their taxi, et cetera, and their time, of course. So I think it would be wise that we have a reciprocal but fair agreement with the City of New Orleans. There's absolutely no reason not to do that, none at all, that I could see, to be fair with our drivers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Yes, sir. Name and address again.
Yes, it's Kevin Dolio, 3700 Orleans Avenue, New Orleans. I haven't been here long enough to have the history of what's occurred with this. I do know it's been worked on for a long time. I do have a concern with the impact at the airport for visitors to the region. If it's passed without the reciprocity agreement worked out with the City of New Orleans, and cabbies are not allowed to pick up at the airport, then visitors to the city, it'll be a significant impact and hardship on visitors to the city to have access to modes of transportation to find their way to locations in the region. So I would just ask that you give this enough time, or maybe a little more time, since there is dialogue now, to try to work through the issue and come to a solution before affecting this action. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. Name and address, please.
Michelle Allenhart, General Counsel for the New Orleans Aviation Board, 900 Airline Drive. Just to add to the director's comments, structurally the way that the ordinance that you're proposing today is that you are going to require every cab driver who is not a Kenner cab driver at the airport, so that means 1,000 cab drivers will have to either get an occupational license in Kenner, and not just a license, and headquarter here. Headquarter is not defined in the statute, but under Louisiana law, at a minimum, that would mean that unless this ordinance forces Orleans Parish, who was just spoken to yesterday for the first time on the council level, unless they pass an ordinance to give reciprocity, that means that 1,000 cab drivers have got to open up an office in Kenner and house it with an executive in order to get a CPNC to go to the airport. And that means that how you have it structured now is not actually accomplishing what the stated goal is, which is to help the Kenner drivers. Because what you're doing by doing this, as I read it, by requiring the headquarters to be in Kenner, is that you've made it impossible for 1,000 cabbies who do the most of the transportation to actually do their job. And so unless, while Kenner and the city of New Orleans work out their issues, you've got 1,000 cab drivers who cannot make a living. And you also have the millions of people who come through the airport, both people in Kenner and the surrounding community, who are not going to have the transportation that they need. It cannot all be done by TNCs, just like when we were here talking about the TNC issue. It cannot all be done by TNCs. We also need the cabs in order to meet the demand. And right now, how it's written, it says that unless your headquarters are in Kenner, you cannot get a CPNC here, because Orleans Parish does not have reciprocity right now to the level that you have required in the ordinance. It says a jurisdiction with similar opportunity. It's not defined, no one knows what it is, and there's nothing in the law that tells us what it is. So what de facto that means is that every cab driver has got to have a headquarters here. They've got to move their business to Kenner. Putting aside the constitutional and state legal issues that might be implicated by that, what you're really doing right now, it deserves discussion, and the healthy discussion that we had in connection with the TNCs. And I think that we've finally passed that threshold where we've got the right legislators talking to each other, and we've got people at the table where we're working together. We've already gotten over the TNC hurdle, but maybe we can sit down and talk about and get to the next hurdle, which is the taxi hurdle. But as it's currently drafted, what you're about to pass today would require every cab driver, 1,000 cab drivers, to move their offices and house them here with their executives. And as a practical matter, I don't think that that can really be done in a timely way to meet all of the transportation demands that we have in our city. And so I would respectfully ask that we continue the conversation in a productive way, because we finally got the right people at the table to do that. But I can't see how it benefits anybody to have a situation where we don't have enough cabs to meet the needs, or you're requiring all of the St. Charles, Jefferson Parish, and Orleans cabs to open their offices here in order to get a CPNC to come to the airport.
Thank you. We have any, well, before Councilman Moreno, you have the light. But I'd like to hear from our administration or attorney based on some of the comments that the attorney made concerning this particular ordinance, if you don't mind.
Councilman, as I understand this, and I did not author this piece of legislation, Mr. Ed Rapier did, he is not here this evening, but it's my understanding that they would be required to have a domicile within the city of Kenner, but only if there's not a reciprocal agreement. So without that reciprocal, with that reciprocal agreement, I have a hard time saying that too, then the issues that Ms. Allen Hart addresses would not be a problem. But so that's my understanding.
Thank you.
I don't know if that cleared anything up, but there is no reciprocal agreement, and yes, they would have to be domiciled in the city of Kenner.
Thank you. Councilman Moreno, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for our legal department. What is the requirement for a business, any business, to get an occupational license? Do they have to be domiciled in the city that they're getting the occupational license?
I'm going to ask Ms. McGinnis for help on that, but I believe that the occupational license law requires that you have your principal place of business anywhere. I mean, basically, you don't have to have it in Kenner. If you have it, such as Veolia. Veolia has their principal place of business in the city of New Orleans, but they come to the city of Kenner, they show that occupational license, and they're allowed to operate in Kenner. So,
But let me rephrase my question. Okay, my business, I'll use me as an example. My business is domiciled in the city of Kenner, and I have a Kenner occupational license.
Okay.
When I go to do business in Orleans Parish or Jefferson Parish, when I go to get my licenses, my mechanical licenses, they don't require me to get an occupational license in New Orleans because I have one where I'm domiciled. I don't believe, the question that I have for legal, I don't believe that a business can get an occupational license outside of the city or place that they're domiciled. I cannot go to New Orleans and ask for an occupational license because I have no storefront there. So am I correct? Is that,
You are correct, yes.
okay, so Michelle, you're correct that the only way that these cab drivers can get an occupational license in the city of Kenner is actually to open up a storefront.
Well, actually, if I may, there's a difference between domicile and headquarters, and what is before you today says headquarters, which is more than just a storefront. It means that there are executives making decisions about the business in that location. So it is more than just asking all of the Kenner cabs, all of the non-Kenner cabs to open up a storefront in Kenner. It's asking them to move their management to Kenner. And that is something that I don't believe the parties have talked about or really discussed the impact, or that the cab industry understands and have had their say on those issues. And that's why I think that the productive, and it was painful, we all went through the TNCs, but we got there. We got there. We need to get there with the cabs too. Reform is important, and I understand that it is important for this council to do what it promised to do, which is do reform. But the fact that there was only just yesterday the first conversation between council to council shows you that there is work to be done. And if you pass this today, there's only 17 days for what on the TNC side took significantly more than that. And so we again ask that these are important issues to everybody. If you pass it today, you're essentially saying that you cannot drive through Kenner unless you move your offices and your executives here, which no other jurisdiction requires. That's beyond reciprocity and into much larger commercial issues, and the impact is significant and shouldn't be taken lightly. And I think that if we all sit down and have those productive conversations, we can reach the end goal without putting so much of a burden on the taxi industry, because these drivers do not have the funds. They are working very hard, and they've come here through all of their discussions when they were talking about the TNC legislation about what a difficult time they have just making a living. And now what this is going to do is make it even harder for them to make a living, and we are not going to have the necessary transportation at the airport.
Can I just add, so, Ms. Allen Hart, I don't know that you're properly explaining the issue of reciprocity. It's either or, so either they're domiciled or they're headquartered in Kenner, or we have a reciprocal agreement. So it's
That's
not
right.
both, right?
No,
So-
that's right. If there
Right.
is reciprocity.
And I don't know that you're defining headquarters properly either. I agree that that is the word that's used in the legislation, but I don't know that there's a definition of headquarters in the legislation. So-
There isn't, that's
Right.
the issue.
Well, but you're defining it here, so maybe we should let the council define headquarters and not you.
No, I'm just making a public comment and pointing out that it is my opinion, in looking at the larger law in Louisiana and trying to find a definition of headquarters, because it is not defined in your statute. What does it mean under other statutes? And it does not mean domicile. It does mean something more than that. What more than that is, I don't know. I agree with the city attorney of Kenner that it is worth discussion, and that maybe it is something that needs to be defined, but right now it is not.
If you have reciprocity, council members, it is irrelevant. So the reciprocal agreement, it would be that or the headquarters in Kenner. So that's what you're voting on tonight. I think that,
And there currently is no reciprocity.
There's currently no reciprocity, so.
that's right. That's right. We're offering reciprocity. That's what the meeting was about yesterday. It was not the first meeting. It was not the first time this issue has been brought up. This issue has been, we've had conversations with Zach Butterworth. Emails have gone back and forth. I mean, Mr. Rapier has put a considerable amount of effort and time, y'all all know that, into this legislation, and we have reached out. Yesterday was a formal meeting at the request, I think, of a New Orleans council member. So I want y'all to be clear. I understand Ms. Allen Hart, has concerns, but we've offered a reciprocal agreement. We want reciprocity. That's what we want. That's what we want for Kenner cabs, Kenner taxis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney. Thank you. Thank you, Miss. Yes, sir. Name and address.
My name is Niran Gunasekara. I live in St. Rose, 253 Diane Drive. I'm the president of the taxi union, ASME Local 234. And I was, shocked that you guys were taking this issue today. I just happened to come because there was some other issue that I wanted to address, because the month of July, when you passed this taxi ordinance, you all promised the taxi drivers that you won't inspect the cars. But for the past month, taxi drivers has been terrorized by this one person in the city of Kenner Code Enforcement. And I have been calling Mr. Sigur many times. Why is this happening? I know I'm going a little off, but I'm going to focus on today's issue right now.
Yes, sir.
But I just want to issue this because I'm the president of the taxi union. They look up to me. I'm the voice of the voiceless. So when this guy has been
Sir, can we,
going against the ordinance.
can we stick to the subject? You can come back later and talk about that, but
Okay,
for right now,
I'll
let's.
do that. Okay.
Yes.
So this issue right here, yes, it'll benefit the Kenner drivers. I agree. But we need some discussion here, because you are going to a different jurisdiction, and there are certain issues that we need to solve. So you cannot just go into New Orleans and say, I want to use their cab stands, or just go into a hotel and pick somebody up. That's going to make those guys angry. But this could be solved by having a, honest discussion, because if you go back to 2012, when the city of New Orleans passed these taxi regulations, this is what they put us. They pit one group of cab drivers against another group of cab drivers. Then you guys, from New Orleans to Kenner, you've been whacking us with these Uber regulations. You told us public safety is #1 priority. You told us to do this, do that. Get that insurance, have new cars, have cameras, have panic buttons. You forced the cab drivers into destitute. And now you're coming out with more rules and regulations. Where are we going to pay for?
30 seconds, sir.
Well, my final thoughts about all this is we need further discussions. Do not rush into this right away. Just let's talk. Let's get the interested parties together and come up with a solution. I have a solution. I have informed Mr. Sigur about that solution, but I don't think it's right now to open my ideas. First, we need to talk with the interested parties.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask him a question?
Mr. Naran, if I can real quick.
Yeah, Councilwoman DeFranchis has a question.
I just want to ask you a question. I understand your point about we need to have further discussions. Absolutely. I think everybody up here agrees. I think the problem is that there haven't been very many. You know, we deferred it before and nothing happened. No real dialogue occurred. And so at some point, you push to have a dialogue take place, and sometimes you've got to push a little to get it done. And I think that's what's happening right now. But the question I have for you directly is,
Yes.
are you in favor of having reciprocity or not? You representing the cab industry that you represent, are you all in favor of having reciprocity?
In, the issue there is how much it's going to cost. You know, the airport is charging us $200 for a decal. Then each respective jurisdiction is charging fees for driving a cab in Orleans, Jefferson Parish, St. Charles Parish, City of Kenner. Then we have this equipment that's in our cars. They don't let you drive at the airport unless you
I
have
remember
a
that.
report
do
whether
remember
this
that.
equipment is working. That's $50. So when you add all this, it's going to cost us $1,000 just to be in business. Then you brought this competition without any regulations. So now I had to beg. I'm not a person who wants to beg, but that's what Orleans Parish, Jefferson Parish, City of Kenner, and the whole country is on cab drivers. But you have to think of something. Just go down Hollanday Street. There's potholes. Those potholes were not there. Look at the traffic that it has caused. Everybody wants cheap stuff, but cheap stuff has brought more headaches to us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Name and address.
Al Morella, 4260 East Loyola Drive, 5th District, 45 years. Once again, I see Mr. Nareem is here all by his lonesome. I don't see anybody from the cab companies here. I don't see any representatives here to talk about this. He's by his lonesome again. So, Mr. Nareem, one more time, I'm going to stand behind you, man. Even though your own people won't, I will. Now, I want to talk, I want to say this. Ms. Roussel, as far as I'm concerned, is right what she said about this reciprocal clause. But we've had this discussion about occupational licenses in this chamber several years ago when contractors were domiciled in New Orleans and they was coming to do work in Kenner. The way I understood the law to read, the state law to read, and I think Councilman Reyno was right on this point as well. If you domicile, you have a business in New Orleans and you have an occupational license in New Orleans, and you want to expand your business into the city of Kenner, it was my understanding that you did not have to obtain another occupational license. As long as you had one in the metro New Orleans area and you was domiciled there. Am I correct on that? Can anybody correct me on that? Unless TNCs, there's different language or there's something different pertaining to TNCs. Now, I stand for correction. Can anybody correct me on that if I'm wrong?
Did well, Mr. Morella.
Well, thank you, young lady. I appreciate that. Anybody got any comments, any questions? Thank you.
I do. Councilman Impastato, you have the floor, sir.
Ms. Hart, you mind? I have a set of questions that I think are kind of jointly to our city attorney's office and to Ms. Allen Hart.
Yes, sir.
Number one, do we have any indication as to how the New Orleans City Council sits on the concept of reciprocity?
All I know is yesterday was the very first time that a city council member has met with a Kenner council member to discuss the taxi issue. Ms. Roussel is correct. There have been discussions with the administration in the mayor's office. There have been discussions with the airport, but they have not been detailed discussions about this particular taxi legislation until recently, when it was recently proposed, and then we had it continued because of weather, and now we're back, and now there's been one conversation between actual legislators, and as Mr. Neron said, the taxi cab industry was not fully part of that conversation, at least as far as he knows and as far as we know. I think it would be productive to have some of these conversations to work out some of these issues, because as it sits now, it is a flawed statute.
Let's say hypothetically, and Lee, this might be more for you. Let's say hypothetically, we pass this tonight, and the New Orleans City Council does not pass something granting reciprocity. Well, maybe this is for both of you. What happens then? What are the consequences at that point?
If Kenner enforces the new ordinance, the consequence would be that there will be 1,000 less cabs going through, because every single one of them will have to open up a storefront and put their executives here. Now, we may not agree about what headquarters means, but it's not defined, and at a minimum, it is that your executives are there making decisions if you're going to look to the other laws in Louisiana that discuss it. So that means
Ms.
that
Russell,
you're
do
not
you
going to
agree?
have, you're going to have 200 cabs.
Do you agree with that?
Without, Councilman Impastato, without the reciprocal agreement, yes, New Orleans cabs, New Orleans taxis would have to be located, headquartered in the city. So, I don't know that I agree with her
I
statement that
can
1,000.
maybe interject 1 second.
Well,
That's
here's
if-
my
I have
question.
the
Hold on.
numbers for the number of cabs we have.
Here's
so
my
it is
que-
1,000.
Here's my question. If hypothetically we pass this tonight and New Orleans does not pass something similar that grants reciprocity, do we run the risk of depleting the cab availability at the airport, and if so, to what extent?
Yes,
Is my
by
concern.
1,000 cabs. Currently, the numbers are, there are 198 Kenner cabs. There are 812 Orleans cabs registered at the airport with permits to go there. The 812 Orleans cabs, and then you add on to that the Jefferson Parish cabs and the St. Charles cabs. And we haven't even discussed about the reciprocity issues with those parishes. The bulk of the cabs do come from New Orleans, that's 812. The 198 cabs that have permits from Kenner is woefully insufficient to do it. Now, the other aspect is that this is, if you pass it today, you have 17 days until it becomes effective. No one is considering what the city council calendar is for New Orleans, or that it would have to have a first reading, or that
A
there
second
needs to
reading, a
be
layover.
a layover and a consensus among that council. So no matter what, without fail, even if you can get the New Orleans City Council to give reciprocity, whatever reciprocity means, because it is not defined, it just says similar opportunity, undefined what that is, you will have a gap of time where there are cabs who are not allowed to come into Kenner if you enforce this rule.
Lee, do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's an enforcement issue, Councilman, so yes, it's an enforcement issue. Currently, CP&C, New Orleans cabs are supposed to have a Kenner CP&C. It's an enforcement issue. We haven't enforced that provision for years. So it is an enforcement issue, and I do agree with Ms. Allen Hart. I guess we'll trust her numbers. I don't know if Uber can come in and take up the slack, but I don't know that code enforcement's gonna go out and prevent cabs from picking up at the airport when you adopt this 17 days from now, when it becomes effective.
Which we have not done when, before this hit the agenda.
Right.
They were required to come get a CPNC.
And if there are laws currently in place requiring a CPNC that are not enforced, then enforce those laws rather than pass the current ordinance that's before you today that will with certainty cause conflict
Well,
and
Ms.
with
Hart,
certainty
that
have an
was-
issue.
That was a conversation that I did have with your council member, that in light of this not getting passed, our option is to start enforcing on the streets of Kenner against all City of New Orleans taxis who do not have a CPNC and cite them for being in our city illegally. That could happen today or
We
tomorrow
can't-
now,
we-
because we're probably too late to do it today, but.
I can't speak to what you as an administration and Kenner decide to do with the laws that you currently have on the books. What I can speak to is the law that you currently have right now that is before you. And the law that is currently before you has vagueness in it when it deals with headquarters. It has vagueness in it when it talks about similar opportunity. But the clear intent is to create reciprocity, and that if Orleans doesn't cave to what you're asking for, the people who actually suffer for it are the actual community who's trying to get from point A to point B because there are not enough cabs. And that is an absolute fact. There will not be enough cabs. And so I ask you, please,
Thank you.
continue it so that we can have productive discussions. We were productive before, we can be productive again.
Thank you. Mayor Zahn, you have the floor, sir.
I didn't want to, if any other council who had comments, but I want to answer Councilman Impastato's, I guess, not question, but asking of Ms. Hart. Whether y'all pass it tonight or don't, but if you did pass it and the New Orleans Council, God knows when their schedule is, we can always delay enforcement as the administration. So that won't, I don't think that will affect this council's decision whatsoever, because we can wait to see what the New Orleans Council does. You all pass the law, we'll enforce it, but we can enforce it based on waiting for the New Orleans Council to decide what they do. I got to go back, sitting through all these meetings since the beginning of the year with Uber and cabs, I'm starting to listen to now, for the past few months, before y'all passed the Uber ordinance, let's just call it that, TNCs, it was always the Uber cars, Uber outweighed the taxi cabs. Now all of a sudden it sounds like we're going to lose New Orleans taxi cabs. It just sounds like a little bit different from what we've been listening to for months. We've had the airport come up here before and say, ooh, we can't lose Uber, we can't, and look, we did that, we appreciated that. But now I'm just kind of, I guess my question is, Ms. Hart, if you all aren't, I'm sure y'all are thinking the same thing, when did it change that the cabs are outweighing the Uber drivers?
If I may, it never did outweigh, and it's not an inconsistent position. What we're dealing with is there is so much traffic from the airport that we cannot survive without either one. We have to have the TNCs. We also have to have the cabs. There's too much traffic. If you take away either one, we do not have enough people transporting people from the airport. There are 11.1 million people who came through the airport last year, significantly rising. Earlier today, we had the conditional use request because of the expansion of the airport, and the expansion is driven by the economic engine of people coming through and spending money here. And the more people who come through, they have to get from point A to point B. We have always said that we need both. We have always said that the transportation needs require more than just cabs. They require the TNCs. We have never said that the cabs aren't necessary. They're all necessary.
Yeah, I didn't say you just said that. It seemed like Uber, we couldn't afford to lose Uber. Now, we're trying to make sure we don't lose the cabs, and it would be upon the New Orleans City Council to do what they need to do at that point, correct? If this council passes what Councilman Segura, you proposed it, what Councilman Segura has proposed, I don't see how it hurts any cab in Kenner or any Kenner cab company or any Kenner cab resident. I just don't see that. And look, I'm not being sarcastic, but this is not the New Orleans City Council, New Orleans administration. We're going to put the Kenner residents first with working with the city of New Orleans.
And the Kenner cabs are not enough to meet the needs, and we're all working in a community to reach the common goal. If we have people who come in and have a bad experience, they're not coming back. And so that doesn't hurt just New Orleans, it hurts all of us. It hurts the tax dollars that you guys collect when they come and spend money in the concourse. It hurts the dollars that you guys get from the taxes that come through. That this is a regional issue, and it's an important issue, but we're in Kenner, and it requires everybody to cooperate together, and we think that that is important. And yes, City of New Orleans and Kenner have to cooperate. It is just a question of whether or not we are going to sit at a table and have a productive discussion, or whether or not there is an ordinance passed, and then we're at the point where it's like, okay, how do we solve the issue quick enough? And the quick enough can't be 17 days. That's not enough time.
We can
The
delay, we
administration-
can delay the enforcement. I've already said that.
And I understand the delay in the enforcement, but then how long does that give to the community as far as knowing what's going to happen and making plans?
That de-
People,
That depends on the city of New Orleans being reciprocal. That's it.
Thank you. Councilman Segura, you have the floor.
Thank you. Okay, first comment. This was put on the agenda on 2 meetings ago. Correspondence was sent to the city of New Orleans. They were aware of this legislation prior to that meeting. It was because of the city of New Orleans' request that this be removed from that from that ordinance to have more conversation. It took that whole month to get the city of New Orleans to come to the table yesterday to have a discussion. So that is part of my concern. You can say you want to talk, but y'all have no actions to sit down and meet on a reasonable timeline. I have wanted this meeting yesterday, a month ago, but it never occurred because nobody in the city of New Orleans thought it was interested enough. Oh, they'll just keep passing it down the line like they did with the TNC. Every time on meeting day, I'd get the phone call, oh, well, we're not ready. It came from you too, Ms. Hart. I haven't read the whole legislation. I need more time. So we would have to continue the TNC legislation to allow y'all more time to study. That went on and on and on. I don't want a repeat of that. We have made a decision to move forward. I want to see this happen. But I do agree these meetings are important, and that's why I tried to get meetings sooner than yesterday. But I can only ask for a New Orleans person to meet with me. If they choose not to, whose fault is that? So if the city of New Orleans doesn't want to take an interest in this, we should just do what we need to do. So that's what this comes down to. You're asking me to give you more time to go talk, but I don't have a guarantee that there are going to be more talks. Give me a guarantee that I will have somebody next week to talk to. Can you? Oh, yeah, I know, you're not the right person. I got it. Okay. A couple other comments. The 1,000 cabs. Are you referring to the cab companies that have hundreds and hundreds of cabs in their fleet as part of that number?
no, I'm referring, most of the cabs that are out at the airport that are from Orleans Parish are independent operators.
Well, why do I see United and White Fleet cabs and other company cabs out here in the city of Kenner then?
They're doing other runs than.
But are they allowed to be in my city? They're not at the airport?
I cannot speak to what is taking place off of the airport property.
Well, somebody's going to, and that's our job. So we can pull this off the agenda completely, and then tomorrow tell my code enforcement, start going out there and citing those cars in the city. Was that what you want me to do? Is that going to keep them coming back to the city to pick up fares at the airport? I don't see no head shaking at that, but
Because it's not an
no,
airport issue.
it's not. So I will offer a one-meeting deferral in hopes that the city of New Orleans will take an interest in this and meet on this topic and be productive in that meeting to show us a path to get it resolved. If not, we will move forward. I move for a one-meeting deferral.
I second.
So before we vote, after all of that, I have a couple of comments too. Obviously, as far as the city of Kenner is concerned, we want to participate. We want to be part of the overall conversation for the greater New Orleans area. We always have been. So I don't want anybody to imply that or to think that we're not. The reality is we have been trying, like Councilman Segura said, to put this meeting on. But it has always been pushed back, pushed back, pushed back. Even the attorney said herself, she don't know when they will be able to get to it. So that's our concern. How do we get assurance that we're going to be able to address this, because we cannot let another city dictate our responsibilities. And if we keep doing that, that's what we look like. We cannot do that. I'm going to support Councilman Segura's one meeting deferral only because the attorney did say there were some other municipalities who did not get the information. They have not been part of the conversation, St. Charles, St. John, and beyond, which, and they should be part of it. But we cannot keep pushing this down the road. We have to make a decision and do something, and whatever happens, happens, and then we have to deal with it. And I'm just saying, I think if we, like the mayor said, they don't have to enforce it, we have 17 days, but we've gone beyond that, so we got more time for the one meeting deferral. So I will be supporting the deferral, but I will not be deferring, I will not be supporting one after that. We're going to have to do something with this.
Okay.
Any more conversations? Councilman Wilmot, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to ditto the president's comments as well. I would like to see some cooperation out of New Orleans on this issue, and I'd like to see it done before the next meeting. I'm going to support the one meeting deferral, but thereafter, I would hope that we'd have a vote at that point in time, because I mean, I think that's reasonable. So that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Reno, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to support the one meeting deferral. However, if the city of New Orleans legislators, not the administration, if the city of New Orleans legislators meet with the legislators of the city of Kenner between now and that deferral meeting when it comes up for a vote, and there's positive negotiation there, then I'm not going to commit and say I'm not going to commit to another deferral. If we're talking, that's the whole reason that we want to do that. So I would encourage the airport to sit down with the legislative body of the city of New Orleans and say, hey, I think y'all need to come to the table. So I'm not going to, I heard my other council members say, you know, I'm not going to vote for another deferral. If we come to the table, I will be supporting another deferral if it's brought up again. So, and thank you, Mr. President.
And if I may have just one comment to that, Keith, no problem. That's always the intent. But from history is the day before the meeting is when they want to talk.
No.
That cannot happen.
Councilwoman DeFrances.
You know, again, if we do work out reciprocity, it's a moot point. You know, everything else goes away, all the other problems. But I also understand from our gentleman with whom I've worked before from the taxi cab industry that it's a very complex issue. And there are a lot of other factors that have to be addressed as well, and it takes time to address them. But again, to support everyone else, we can't wait till the last minute. It's going to take multiple meetings to address those problems. It's not a black and white issue. It's not a purple and green issue. It's not one issue. It's multiple issues that need to be addressed. And they have to be addressed one day after the other in multiple meetings. So I just want to point that out, that it's going to take, starting now, not waiting till the end, and have multiple meetings to get to an end point where everyone benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for some clarity from Councilman Reno's comments and my comment, when I said I will not support, what I actually meant was if there is no conversation, if there is no type of consensus to go forward, I cannot support waiting. If there is a consensus to work together, if there is a consensus to try to figure this out, then obviously we would be, remiss not to try to work it out. But we can't, what I meant was we can't keep going back and forth, oh, I can't make the meeting today, oh, I don't agree. Eventually, we have to make a decision. And that's what I meant by when I said that I will not be supporting another one. But thanks to you giving an opportunity for clarity. Are these old lights or are these Councilman Wilmot, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to ditto the same thing. If we can get some productive dialogue going on, that's what it's all about. I mean, sure, we'd go ahead and possibly defer again. That's possible. But I'm saying if there's no productive dialogue, then I think we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to address the issue. So that's where I stand on it. So thank you.
So,
Everybody stands here.
motion by Councilman Segura for a one-meeting deferral, second by Councilwoman DeFrances. Council, please vote for the deferral. Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 12B is summary ordinance number 12,292, an ordinance authorizing acceptance of a donation of property by Lawrence L. Lambert designated as Tract M, said tract of land forming a part of the original Oakland Plantation and adjacent to Betsy B. Hammond Playground.
Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Klein. And before we vote, I'd like to thank Attorney Roussel for her support. This is a perfect example of people from the community that have a vested interest in the welfare, not only for the city, but for this, particularly for the children. We all are, particularly those of us from District 1, are familiar with the Bessie Hammond Playground. The area that we're talking about is directly behind the playground where we know it now, where we are presently cutting the grass. But now the playground will extend another 50 yards or something like that, whatever it is. So this is something that will extend an area, not only for the residents from that area, but the city of Kenner to be able to do other things for different people like the fire department, the police department, to run different drills and exercises for the children to participate. So this supports everyone. It gives Mr. Maricoli more grass to cut, but that's okay. You know, we got a couple of lawnmowers. So Attorney Roussel, thanks a lot for all your support on this. We look forward to making it finalized, and I'm sure the citizens and the residents from the back of the track area will support this and look forward to it. Thank you. Councilman Wilmot, you have the floor. Is that from O? That's from O. I want to make sure. Motion by Councilman Carroll, second by Councilman Klein to accept. Council, please vote. Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 13 is resolutions and motions by council members. Item 13A is a resolution appointing Mr. Thomas Lynn to the Municipal Fire and Police Civil Service Board of the City of Kenner, whose current term expired on July 30th, 2017, for an additional term of 3 years.
Motion by Councilwoman DeFrances, second by Councilman Wilmot to accept. Councilman, please vote.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 14 is items removed from the consent agenda. We have none. Item 15 is acceptance of contracts and similar matters approved by the mayor. Item 15A is summary ordinance number 12,293, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of one 2653B precision cut trim and surrounds mower from John Deere Company in the amount of $29,406.30, utilizing state contract number 4400008761 for the Department of Parks and Recreation.
Motion by Councilman Reno, second by Councilman Impastato to accept. Council, please vote. Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 15B is a resolution approving change order number 1 to the contract with Brotherhood Way General Contractors, LLC, dated June 16, 2017, regarding the Roosevelt Boulevard Decorative Landscape Lighting Phase 1 to increase contract time by 29 calendar days for the Department of Public Works.
Motion by Councilman Segura, second by Councilwoman DeFrances to accept. Council, please vote. Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 15C is a resolution approving change order number 1 to the contract with D.L. Daigle and Company, LLC, dated March 6, 2017, regarding ADA compliance for the Punch Train Convention and Civic Center for an increase of 120 contract days and a net decrease of $4,616 for the Department of Public Works.
Motion by Councilman Reno, second by Councilman Klein to accept. Council, please vote. Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 16 is ordinances and resolutions in summary for first reading. Item 16A is an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from PCMG in the amount of $7,642.30 to furnish security cameras in accordance with the telephone bid number T17-2524 for the Department of Parks and Recreation. Item 16B is an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from UniFirst Corporation to lease uniforms to the Departments of Public Works, Fleet Management, and General Services on an as-needed basis in accordance with sealed bid number 17-6404 in an amount not to exceed $40,000 per year for the Department of Public Works. Item 17 is reports from the council and our special committees.
Is Mr. Ince here, or did he leave?
He left.
You left.
So I'm leaving.
Well, I'm going to try to walk my way through this, and if anybody else want to, well, Ms. Fauché, you maybe can help me out with this. And she left. And this is pertaining to the event we had Saturday at LaSalle Landing. If you would please give her some information on that.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do after I leave here is send an email to Mike Ince that I had to do this because he left, and he should not have left. I apologize for that. So we had the opening, the ribbon cutting for the butterfly garden. Well, not the ribbon cutting, the groundbreaking for the butterfly garden. The LaSalle Landing has been designated as a Monarch Way Station. There apparently are these designations throughout the state and throughout the United States where people will come and people who are interested in that sort of thing will come and actually see the butterfly trail. There were a number of volunteers out there who were planting flowers, and it was just delightful. We also had the return of the Westerlies. As you know, we have a Sound Places grant, which allows them, I think, to come back 4 times a year, plus additional grant funding that is available that's being used for local schools. And then following that was an event at the
Planetarium?
Planetarium. I was
You're
supposed
a
to say
good team.
aquarium. I'm having a problem here. The Planetarium, where there was music by the Westerlies and a coordinated light show.
Oh, you just
Where were you?
All right, Ms. Stan, she's doing a fantastic job. But you can finish up.
Yes, because could you correct everything you could probably hear from the?
She stopped at the planetarium, if you want to know.
Oh, yes. So Kenner has its first and only butterfly garden. How many people knew that existed, right? So yeah, Saturday I think was a huge hit. It's the whole basis for why we acquired this grant, so that we could start to activate spaces that were previously underutilized. I still have yet to talk to anybody in the city of Kenner that can remember water that flowed through the fountains at LaSalle's Landing. So it's being used for a better purpose, I think. We had a ton of people out there. Everybody loved the music. We did have some issues with the parking, of course, but we're looking to alleviate that problem. We're looking to do similar things throughout Rivertown, and we always welcome any kind of input from that. That's the whole basis for the Main Street program. As I think I've said before in front of the council, anybody who's interested in serving as a volunteer to the 4 committees or even the Rivertown Arts Council are very welcome to apply. It's a very easy application. And there's also board membership seats as well. But like I said, that's the whole purpose for it. So we're using music under the Sound Places grant, which is offered by the Project for Public Spaces, National Endowment for the Arts, and Chamber Music America, to have the Westerlies come down for their final time, which will be in November. And for that time, we're actually tailoring it to accompany the Prospect 4 installation, which is an international art exhibit, and we are a satellite location for that. So we will be having the Westerlies out again. I think Councilman Carroll will agree with me that we are looking to possibly do a second laser light show with the brass bands. So that was a huge surprise to me as well. Even after seeing rehearsal of it, I was completely blown away with it. But we're looking to do similar things throughout the year. You know, I think that our approach to this is not one big event to save Rivertown, but a continual series of small events and small wins so that we can see an impact over time.
Yeah, and again, just to comment on that, Mr. Ince, you know, not only yourself, General Services, Public Works, Recreation, all of our infrastructure people were there to ensure that the event went well. We had a nice crowd from the farmers market. Particularly you mentioned the laser show in the planetarium. I mean, the guys played the music to our laser show first time with very little knowledge of the show itself. And it was almost like they had been practicing for a long time. Everyone in the auditorium appreciated it and thought it was going to be part of the second act. That was only one show, but that could be something when they come back again. We'll be able to, maybe to a different theme, to be able to participate in that aspect of it.
I completely agree. And, you know, something to think about other bands. You know, they're not the only brass band. You know, we have a lot of great musicians in the area, in the entire state, particularly school children that, you know, we would like to offer that opportunity up to. And that's one of the things that I'm really happy about has come from this grant, is that the Westerlies have really taken it upon themselves to work with school children. Numerous schools so far, I can't name them all, but they've also done some things in New Orleans while they've been here as well. But that's the whole point of it. You know, it's not a rare occasion for kids that play music to come in contact with high-profile musicians, let alone Juilliard-trained or Manhattan Conservatory-trained musicians, but traveling musicians, and setting that example that, you know, we can play host to musicians like this from New York City that do have that sort of pedigree and are interested in being involved in Kenner. You know, I think they've taken a really good approach to learning about Kenner and using that history of Kenner to promote music within it.
Well, thank you. And, you know, since you're there is a grant that we will be receiving. If you want to elaborate a little bit about that too, about
Right.
what it will detail and what we'll be doing with the money from the grant.
Right. So it's actually a pilot grant, you know, which is it has its growing pains, but it's really exciting too because we're one of only 2 communities selected to receive this grant. Opelousas is the other recipient of it. They had a band. It's more tailored towards wind instruments. So I think that who we received with the Westerlies was a really good fit for us. But it was a pilot program created by Chamber Music America in partnership with Project for Public Spaces. And so a portion of the funding came from the National Endowment for the Arts, but what they went and did was they looked how they could create you know, an active space by utilizing musical residencies in communities that were looking for that kind of approach. And so for us, you know, we participated in a mock exercise to identify locations in Rivertown that had potential to be activated, that people knew about, that maybe, you know, had ideas for but didn't in place it. So, you know, that's what it was built around. I think that, you know, we're all learning from it. We had a conference call about it this afternoon to discuss some things that, you know, we're learning from it, how we can make it better. Of course, advertising is the number one thing that's always presented to us about it. But I think that we're giving the feedback to them that they're looking for. It's easy to activate these kind of things in New Orleans because everybody knows New Orleans. Everybody knows it's popular. That's where, you know, brass musicians hail from. So we actually kind of had the discussion of, you know, is there a saturation with people participating because we did have a brass band? But I think that all the feedback that I received from folks is that this band isn't a traditional New Orleans trad jazz band. You know, they have a mix of different styles that I think drew people in and wanted to learn more about, specifically children, which is what I think I'm getting the most out of it and learning from is how interested kids are in this. So if we can get, you know, kids out and participating in the museums that we have and getting them thinking that they can participate with the Rivertown Arts Council or the Main Street program as kids, I think that we've done a good service.
Thank you very much. And I like to say that, you know, I like to thank the council, the administration, particularly for the Rivertown area. Even though Rivertown is in District 1, it's the historic part of the city. It is physically located in District 1, but it is all of ours, what we should be proud of. And I want to thank Mayor Zahn, and he gets tired of me talking about it, but we have not always had a good, what's the term? I want to be politically correct, relationship in the going on in Rivertown. We just hadn't, but that's behind us. We're going forward. The ambiance, the upkeep of it is improving, and it is something we have to just keep doing, not only when we're gone, but people that follow us. So we will continue to improve the Rivertown area. We look forward to it. Councilman Segura mentioned about the stage that the mayor promised to support getting for the next Freedom Fest and whatever. I know she probably don't want me to say this again. Ms. Fauché, there's a certain part of Rivertown that we have to improve there also. I'm not going to say what it is, but you have to keep going across the street to use somebody else's facilities that we don't have in the Rivertown area. So that is another part. If we want to keep wanting people to come to these type festivities, we're going to have the accommodations to supply it. And that is something more for us to be able to look forward to.
Right, and something I kind of like to elaborate on because, you know, when you throw out, you know, planner jargon, so to speak, and you say creative placemaking, people ask, what is creative placemaking? Creative placemaking isn't limited to one neighborhood in any city, but for you to get those ideas in your mind to activate, locations throughout your city, you kind of have to revert back to who you are, and our sense of place in Kenner, Rivertown is our sense of place. That's where Kenner comes from. And so if we're going to implement these kind of strategies throughout the city, we first need to take care of what Kenner is. And I think that Rivertown is a great example of that to spread throughout the city.
Thank you, Mr. Daines. Councilman Klein, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to announce that next weekend, the Mitchell Brothers will put on another carnival at the Esplanade Mall in the parking lot. They've placed or put several carnivals on. It's been a very successful carnival. So come out and enjoy the rides, and play the games. Kids, teenagers, people up to my age, they all have fun out there. So it'll be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday of next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Madam Clerk? Oh, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. Item 18 is new business. We have none. Item,
18A.
oh, I'm so sorry. Item 18A, at the request of Councilmember Reno, a discussion regarding the City of Kenner sign ordinance.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Councilman Reno, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a few questions on signs, and it's political signs. I just want to find out what the position is of the administration regarding of enforcement of political signs on public property. And the reason I'm asking this specific question is because in last year's election, and I'll use this as an example, a sign that was put between the sidewalk and the curb normally would have been picked up, and in last year's election, they said, no, we're just going to move them and put them on, on the homeowner's property side of the sidewalk. So that's one of my questions, if I could get somebody with the administration to respond to that.
Ben?
Councilman?
That was my administration. I'll answer it.
Yeah. No, but I'm asking this administration because, yes, last administration, they said, no, we're just going to pick on movement. I just wanted to know if that's the same thing here.
Why don't we do it in order? You take it first, and I'll finish
Okay.
up.
Okay.
Well, that's not exactly what was, any sign, political or non-political, on public property is not legal. Code enforcement has the duty to remove those signs. We had a discussion that said if a political sign on a residence was, and presumably properly placed on the residence side of the sidewalk, as we would assume, sometimes grass cutters in cutting the grass take and slide it to the other side and then forget to move it back, that would be permissible to not have any action, just put it back or tell the owner to put it back. But any other private property that's not a residence, if the sign is not legal, code was empowered and was instructed to take the signs up.
Okay, so but I guess what I'm asking, so we're doing the same thing with this administration that we did last year?
I guess it's a yes and no answer. If we're talking about the small wire signs, yes. I mean, they are the grass cutters still during this season right now. It's still hot. They move them. Code's just going to go put them back. If we're talking about one that's like, hammered into the ground with the wooden stakes, obviously that was not moved by a grass cutter.
Right.
So that would be removed.
Yeah, if it's on public property, like on
Between the sidewalk and the street.
right. And my next question is the code department complaint-driven on signs, or is it they're actually looking for, if they see a sign that's in violation, they would pick it up?
On the wire signs, they're instructed to put those back, just like Councilman Segura did as Mayor Segura. On the ones that would be wood stakes, as you know, being through 2 elections,
Right.
I've been through 4, those would be removed.
Okay. And signs that are on private property, that are properly placed on private property, is the city removing those signs if the property owner calls and says, I didn't request a sign on my property? And I'm talking about the wooden stakes hammered into the ground. Is that something that the city's would remove, or is that something that they would tell the property owner, if you didn't ask for the sign and it's on your property, then you can remove it? I just didn't know if the city was removing it, or if they were notifying the property owner that was complaining that if it's put on your property illegally, you have the right to remove it.
I guess I'd need a specific case or situation. Usually, I would think 9 times out of 10, it's complaint-driven. If code enforcement sees it between the sidewalk and the street, yes, they're going to remove it, because that's on public property. So I don't know how to answer that completely. If it's between the sidewalk and their home or their business, and they did not request a sign there, usually the property owner would remove it. Code, if the property owner has asked code, I don't know if this has happened, but if the property owner has asked code to remove it, Rick Walter's not here tonight. I don't know if it happened or it didn't happen. Is it a situation that we need to address?
Yeah, it's a situation where a political sign was driven in the ground on a property, and the homeowner requested the city to remove the sign. And I said, you can just remove the sign. You don't, the city can't, I don't think the city can go on private property and remove a sign at the homeowner's request. If we did, then we would be, we could be removing lots of signs, and we're actually on private property. And
code would have to have a request for sure, because we wouldn't be able to go down the street and say, oh, that sign doesn't belong there.
Right.
So I would think code would have to have the request to remove the sign off of private property by the property owner. We would not know if you have a sign for your candidate on your property. We wouldn't know whether or not you're with that person. So, I mean, we wouldn't have the right to remove that or have actually the reason to even remove it. So there must have been a request from the property owner to code enforcement to remove the sign, because, code enforcer A doesn't know, hey, that doesn't belong there. Give me the for instance, and I can get you more information. Because when you put something like this blank on here, we don't know who to, we don't know what to be prepared for.
Right, and I just wanted to know if the city has a request from a property owner to go on private property and remove the sign, is the city removing those signs?
If the property, I would assume if the property owner requested it be removed, I would assume I'm assuming it happened. I don't know. I need, it's a yes and no answer. If it happened and you know it happened, then I guess so. But I would assume that the property owner requested us to remove it. Is it a home? Is it a business? You said a home. Is it a?
Well,
as a homeowner, maybe it's an abandoned home.
It's two separate. One is a business and one is a home. I just wanted to know.
Yeah. It must be an abandoned home or an abandoned business that they're not going to remove it. I don't know, because I would think if I woke up tomorrow and saw, an opponent's sign on my property, I think I would just remove it myself.
Right.
But.
And that's the point I was trying to get.
But unless it's under request, this is why it's yes and no, unless it's under request, because maybe they're not going to that home or that business every day. I don't know. I don't know the issue.
Well,
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is what happened. I'm aware of this happening at a different location in the past. If someone puts a sign on your property without your permission, then they can actually be cited in mayor's court. So one of the things, and again, this is probably not this case, but there's been a situation where we get a call, we go investigate, and the sign is actually taken as evidence, so it goes to mayor's court. I don't know if that's what happened here, but there are circumstances, probably pretty rare, but there are circumstances where it would be justified for city code enforcement, and maybe police too, I don't know, I guess Chief can answer that, but definitely code enforcement could go on and collect that, like when we go and write tickets for other types of violations. Again, I don't know if that's what's happened here, but that's the only circumstance I can think of where that would be a justification.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if, basically, if city employees were going on private property at the request of the private property owner to remove a sign that wasn't authorized there. And you know, I understand citing them, and I understand the city telling the property owner, look, you can remove the sign, but for the city to actually go on the site and remove the sign without a citation, without anything, just picking up the sign, said, okay, we'll take that sign down for you. I just,
I
you know,
guess,
that was the question.
you and I could probably have this conversation, you know, for a long time, because it's kind of a how many fairies dance on the head of the pin. But if somebody calls and says, somebody threw this, you know, this, I don't know what it is, think of something good, like trash in my yard, and it's got like letters in it, so it's got addresses, the city would go on that private property and pick that up and keep that as evidence.
Right.
So I don't know if the case we're talking about, but whoever put the sign, the city could go take the sign because they can charge the person who put the sign. Okay? Not necessarily helping the homeowner as much as prosecuting the offender. But again, this could be completely what didn't happen, Councilman. I don't know. There's a circumstance in the past where I think it was Todd's Yogurt where they did that very same thing. But again, I don't know if that's that. Anyway, I was trying to rack my brain for any circumstance under which it would actually be legitimate for us to go on private property and remove that. So that was the only one I could come up with.
Okay. That was really all my questions. I just wanted to find out, you know, what the procedure was and you know.
Thank you, Councilman. Madam Clerk,
Thank you.
you finished, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, that's fine.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Item 19 is unfinished business and motions to reconsider or remove from the tabled position. We have none. Item 20 is persons wishing to address the council on special subject matters.
Yes, ma'am, we have a few. Mr. Al Morella. Name and address.
Al Morella, 4260 East Loyola Drive, 5th District, 45 years. There's been much talk this council meeting and the last council meeting about how well organized Freedom Fest was, and I have no doubt that it was. But no one acknowledged Mr. Greg Buisson, the man who organized that Freedom Fest and was paid $6,000. Now, I'm not implying that anybody who does work, they should get paid. But he was the man who organized it. There was no acknowledgement. And maybe because that he's a political operative, he has some clients on this council, and he has the administration is one of his clients. Maybe that's why. But there was no acknowledgement for him at all, and he's the one who organized it, $6,000. And I'm referencing the article in the Advocate on September the 11th. Second, article in the Times-Picayune on the 8th of September, okay? The fire chief was put on administrative leave. Now, I've been saying for years that I believe the fire chief should be an elected position, and I'll keep on saying it. And I'd like to see this council do a survey and put it out there to the voters and see how many of the voters would be willing to make it an elected position instead of an appointed one. He should be accountable to the people of Kenner who pay his salary, not the mayor. Now, if he can't come here and he owes his employer, which is the people of Kenner, an explanation as to why he was put on administrative leave. If he's under restraint by the Civil Service Board, and he can't at this time, then I'm extending an open invitation to Chief Helmers to come down here when he can and explain to the people of Kenner why he was put on administrative leave. I want to hear it from him. Third, I'd like anybody to tell us about the movie production that was produced at the Pontchartrain Center on the 12th and the 13th of September, as to how much revenues, again, to the Pontchartrain Center, and how much of an economic impact to the city of Kenner. And I'd like to address this to the lady here from the Friends of Rivertown. If you're looking for a cut of some revenues, it shouldn't be off the backs of the people of Kenner that's being charged to park at their own facility. This is what you should be looking for a cut of revenues from, something you don't even know about. And this council won't tell us, people of Kenner, unless I come up here and ask them to tell us about it. I walk that route in the morning, I see what's going on. I'm right there looking at it. So this is what you should be looking for a cut of, not charging people $5 to park on their own property. Now, Councilman Reno.
Mr. Morello, that's your time.
I got one, can I get just a few extra seconds?
Yes, sir.
I asked you at the last council meeting
30
to
seconds.
furnish me some documentation that if Kenner was still subsidizing the Pontchartrain Center and how much. Was you able to get that information for me, Councilman Reno?
It's in the budget.
No, I want some documentation from you. You my employer, I'm giving you a job to do, man. This is your district. This facility is in your district.
And Al, it's in the budget.
No, sir, I'm asking you to bring me the documentation and put it in my hand.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Carroll.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Councilman Impostado, you have the floor.
Yet again, Mr. Morella, your connection between facts and conclusions is distant at best. We also did not mention, since now we have this transaction chart, there's about 150 different people who got paid off of the Freedom Fest that we also did not mention, like every police officer on there who provided security, the Ice House, the Office Depot, the insurance company. None of those were mentioned because none of those were relevant to the discussion at hand. So that's why. So to jump to the conclusion, as you always do, that there's some semblance of corruption or questionable behavior without any facts to support it is disingenuous at best. And there was nothing mentioned about abuse on Creative because there was no need. It wasn't up for discussion. Nobody asked any questions about that. Nobody had any issues with that. And I know why you did what you did, and that's okay. It's all a political game, and that's okay. You want to use your time, you have that right. But I just think it's important to talk about, if anybody wants to know every check that was written, keep in mind, this report was given here so that it would be publicly available information. I mean, there's no secrets here what checks were written and who they were written to, and if someone has a question, we can address that. But to make a corruption conclusion without facts is just not appropriate. But anyway.
And Mr. Al, I have an answer for you about your question about the production at the Pontchartrain Center. They actually did not shoot a film at the Pontchartrain Center on those dates that you asked about. Oh, there you are. The production is called Deadlier Than the Male. The film was actually shot, that portion of it, at a private residence. They used the Pontchartrain Center for a temporary base camp where they fed the employees and the actors and that kind of thing, and they paid the Pontchartrain Center $3,000 to do so.
Yes, sir. You have a comment to Ms. Fortunato?
Chris, I'm sure they didn't allow them to park their equipment there and feed them for free. I'm sure they was charged, so I'd like to...
$3,000. They paid them $3,000
okay.
to use that facility.
Okay,
in the parking
and
lot.
what was the economic impact for the city of Kenner off of that? Nothing?
Al, that's probably going to be difficult to determine because apparently if they didn't eat at the restaurants in Kenner and they used that as the base camp, they fed them privately through their own funds.
Okay.
And I don't know if they stayed in hotels
Okay.
because they just shot 2 days, so maybe they stayed overnight in a hotel, but, you know, that would probably be minimal.
If you can get me some additional information on that, I
It may
appreciate
be
it.
difficult to do that because they're,
Okay.
you know, those actors may make their own arrangements.
Okay. Can I respond to the councilman, Councilman Carroll?
Yes, by all means.
First of all, Councilman Impostado, here you go again, going on the defensive. No one accused you of any corruption. No one even insinuated any corruption. All I said was that the man, you all said how well organized this event was. It would seem to me if you're going to brag about how well it was organized, you would at least acknowledge the man who organized it. All this corruption stuff, all this is in your head. You always have to go on the defensive and single yourself out. So I'm going to say to you, though you're a lawyer, I'm going to say this to you, like I say all the time. I hope you never have to go into a court of law and be put on trial for anything, because you Councilman Impastato, would be a prosecutor's dream come true.
Thank you, Mr.
Now,
Morella.
you want to talk some more, Councilman?
I think that's,
I'll be glad to talk with you some more.
Mr. Morella, I think that's.
Thank you, Councilman Carroll.
Thank you, sir. But, Mayor Zine.
I just need to clarify, Buson Creative was not the organizer. They were hired by the Friends of Rivertown, which actually organized the event. Friends of Rivertown hired Buson Creative to actually hire the talent. So I just want to clarify that, just for the record. I don't think I even saw Mr. Buson probably to the late afternoon. He did send some staff members out there, and they actually donate their time, because I don't think $6,000 covers it by the time you get the, was it 6,000, you said? 6,000.
Councilman Carroll, can I respond to him?
Wait.
He's talking to me. Okay, I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
But I'm not arguing with you.
No, I know you're not.
I'm just
Go
telling
ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, it's the regular, and I believe this is why the Friends of Rivertown hired them, just like the patrons of Lafayette Park in the past have hired them. The going rate's about 30%. I believe Buson Creative charges about 10%. It's helpful to the Friends of Rivertown at this time to do that, and also to the patrons who have used them in the past. Maybe not this past year, but in the past. So I just wanted to clarify that's not the correct organizing the event.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Morella?
They were there to assist with it. They were there to assist the Friends of Rivertown, but they didn't organize the event.
You finished? You finished, Mayor? You finished? Now, Mayor.
I'm finished with the truth.
Oh, okay, Mayor. I got the truth right here. Now, I'll tell you what I can do with you, Mayor. I can pass this article to the council clerk and have her pass it to you, and you can read it to everybody in this room. Here it is, right here. Read it, Mayor. You said you don't know if it's $6,000? Here's the truth right here. How about you read it to the people in this room?
First of all, Mr. Morella, you're taking it as an argument.
No, I'm not taking it as an argument. You are disputing what I said, and I have it right here in black and white, and I can have it read to everybody in this room.
I don't know.
Now, you can dispute it all you want. It is what it is. I have it right here. I'll pass it to the council clerk, and you can read the whole
I
article.
was not disputing with you. I was clarifying what their
No,
job
I'm
role.
clarifying what I have in black and white. What's that? Oh, it's right there. You can read
Mr. Mayor, are you finished your answer? Or are you going to read?
I'm finished clarifying the truth.
Okay. Mr. Morella, that's it?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to get that article back and let this young lady here read it.
Oh, Ms. Hunt, no. Councilman Segura, it's not your turn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Councilman Segura, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just actually going to maybe shed some light from Mr. Morell, and I'll go off of the report that we were given that said Buson Creatives was paid for performers, which was money he passed through to the performers. He was paid money for advertising, which he helped pass through to some of the advertising. And unless she hasn't reported it yet, there is no money yet paid. And now again, she's coming up. I see her right there. We see her. I don't wear glasses like you. That's why I can see very well. But I also want to say that just because Councilman Impastato makes a point of reference to your comments as typical, insinuating something, it doesn't mean that that's the truth. A newspaper article can have words on it, but that doesn't make it the truth. How many people believe the newspaper tells the truth? You can ask a lot of people, and I guess you're going to get, I don't believe the newspaper. So I understand that's the only way you get your news is through the newspaper.
All right, I think that's it, gentlemen. Mr. Teff, Mr. Greg Teff. Mr. Greg Teff.
Can I comment?
Mr. Greg Teff.
I can't respond to him?
Oh,
Mr.
I
Morella?
didn't think he was talking to you.
Oh, Mr. Morella.
He was talking to Mr. Morella. So,
The way that Buson When we started planning this festival, I was given a names, I looked up 6 different companies who produces festivals. When I called 3 of the companies, they laughed at me. They said, you can't do this in 4 months. The only person who can is Creative. I didn't even know that Buson wasn't Creative, okay? I met with Jamie. She could do miracles to get this done in 4 months. That's how we got to Buson. Not the city. Nobody pushed him on me. They said at the first meeting that I had, I needed to get a list of producers, and I went and I hired them. The city had nothing to do with hiring them. And they charged us only 10% of their fee, which I have not been billed for yet.
Thank you, ma'am.
In the article, someone called me from the.
Miss, I don't want to keep talking about this.
That's fine, but
All right,
I've never
thank you very
seen
much.
this before.
Yes. Councilman Pistado, you have the floor.
In my business, we would say we rest our case at this point.
Mr. Teff, you have the floor, sir. Name and address.
I don't know if I want to do this. My name is Greg Taft. I live at 3720 West Loyola Drive here in Kenner. But what I have is a situation about enforcement. There seems to be some confusion with who enforces what. And I'm referencing parking on a sidewalk. A lot of people like to walk on the sidewalks, and now they walk on the sidewalk, they have to get in the street, pass up the car, get back on the sidewalk. And the story is, if you talk to code enforcement, we can't enforce that. You have to call the police. Now, the problem you have is with code enforcement, the term I use, you can rat somebody out and they keep it confidential. I'm not so sure if the police department, if you do the same thing, if they're not going to tell the person, well, yeah, your neighbor is the one that called us up to make the complaint. And people are not going to want to do that. But yet, I think it's, here again, we have a code on the books in the UDC that's very well specifies you cannot park on a driveway, not being enforced. And, people get frustrated out there. I mean, they really do. And I just want to know who should be enforcing that.
I'll answer it, Councilman. The police chief is not here, he had to step out, but the police department handles that, but you can always feel free to call code enforcement, and we work jointly with the police department. And you and I talked about that the other morning, but.
So if they call the code enforcement, then they just tell the police and there's no names or?
Yeah, you can call the police, but I'm assuming that's the policy with the police department that you have to give your name, I don't know. But with code enforcement, you can do it without giving your name.
Okay.
But we'll work jointly with the police department.
Yeah, it's just that, it's all over, on the internet, because people don't know, and they want to know who they should call and who should be enforcing it. The other thing I want to bring up is the Freedom Fest. I was a businessman for a lot of years, and, one thing you learn when you're in, especially retail business, you always got to create something that's going to draw people in. And it takes money, it takes you to spend money to make money. And then you have trial and error. The first time you do it, it may not work as well, or maybe you got an expense that you didn't know that you was going to incur. But you know what? If it was successful, what you do is you say, okay, this is what didn't work, this is what we should have done, or from learning from what we should have done, and then we move from there to make it better. That's how it works in business. And I don't understand why the same thing can't be done through the government, because it was a success, and I really believe that is the direction that we need to go to as a city, just to make sure that we start attracting these
30
people
seconds,
coming off
Mr.
that
Teff.
airport, that they use our services here in Kenner. And that's what it's all about. And I think that by us thinking out of the box, going a little extra step, it wasn't perfect. Yeah, maybe some mistakes were made, but by God, it worked. And that's what counts. And so I just want the administration to know, I appreciate what y'all are doing, and I think that's something, the direction I hope we continue to go in. If we don't, shame on us, because we'll just be the same old Kenner, New Orleans will get the business. All we're going to get is just a bone. And I think now we got a chance to get the meat.
Thank you, Mr. Teff. Lenny, did you?
Yeah, I just want to say something.
Councilman Klein, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I represent District 4, and I tell all the residents of District 4, if you see any code violations, to report it to code. That's the number one person to report it to is code. Secondly, report it to me. And thirdly, if other neighbors of yours see the code violations, then they also need to report it to code. Maybe one person, you won't get as much action right away. 2 people, you will. You report it to me, and we'll get code right on it. So we noticed some code violations around the city. We've had several code sweeps in my district, which were successful. So please, if you see code violations and it upsets you, report it to code first and to me second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Patricia Davis. Name and address.
Patricia Davis, 3126 Ohio Street, Kenner. What I'm here in reference to code violations as well. And the code violations for my particular area right now, we're dealing with school buses. Lincoln Manor. Is Lincoln Manor a neighborhood? Yes, we are, because we have houses that's on 2 or more lots. Are we a community? Yes, we are. I looked up the Article 18 of the code violations, which is off-street parking and loading regulations. Due to time, I'm not going through all of this. But the concern that we're having is with the school buses that are being parked in our area. No vehicles licensed are required to be licensed with license plate exceed the 10,000 pound classifications. School buses are 23.5 to 29.5. School buses, license plates, or private bus plates shall be parked on any developed or vacant lot in any residential district, provided that this provision shall not apply to such vehicles that may not be parked for this purpose of delivering or picking up material or merchandise to any resident, established, or lot for the actual time necessary to accomplish said delivery or pickup. Now, with that being said, since the 14th of July, 1980, and has been parked, his vehicle in accordance with the following requirements. There aren't any buses there that were, in other words, like some people would like to say, grandfathered in. We are now in 2017. So those who were given the privileges in 1980 no longer exist. So therefore, since we're talking about ordinances, we would like to see those ordinances dealt with in the Lincoln Manor area. And we've been dealing with this since 2007, when the UNO did their survey back there. We were one of the first people that they came in and did the survey with. Also, too, I just want to reiterate, no backhoes, dozers, forklifts, wreckers, tractors, or any other type of heavy or construction equipment shall be parked on any portion or any developed or vacant lot in the residential neighborhood district, except that while the equipment is needed, is being performed on said lot. So therefore, we would like the council to start enforcing the code ordinances that's due us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Ms. Donna Reno. Name and address, Ms. Reno.
Donna Reno, 42 Emile Avenue, Kenner, Louisiana. I want to answer the lady real quick. The council doesn't enforce it, the administration does. And to do their job. To do their job. Okay, I'm here again. I know you're not going to do it.
Ms. Reno, if we're not going to go back down the road about the apology, because
That's not against the rules, it's not against the law.
all I'm saying is, it has
I'm
been
going to
established that nobody's going to apologize.
And I'm going to establish that I'm going to continue to ask for an apology, written and public, and I'm going to do it every single time because it goes to show the character
Okay, so
of the
once you
person
ask,
who owes
I
the
think
apology.
once you ask for it, we're going to say that you can ask, but once it's asked,
I can ask, I know.
then that's
Now, the other thing is that I would like to give kudos to Ms. Yeadon, and I knew that Buisan was part of the group that put it together. When last meeting, Mary Sharon Howland was given all the kudos for putting it together for the Freedom Fest. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Ms. Reno.
look back at the old meetings.
Mr. Larry Daigle. Name and address, sir.
Larry Daigle, 4128 Tulane Drive, Ken, Louisiana. Hats off to you, ma'am. Freedom Festival's great. Mazon did good. Maria, my wife, told me to tell you thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being her friend. Dominic, you can put a sign on top of my roof if you want. We're gonna miss you. We're gonna miss you in 5 when you go to 4. And I want to say goodbye to a close friend of mine and thank him for the good job he did with Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office. Mr. Johnny Fortunato, we're going to miss him. And I look forward to working for him in the future. And Mr. Zahn, Mayor Zahn, excuse me, doing a great job. Keep up the good work, administration, good work, council people, keep up the good work. Thank y'all. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Mr. Daigle. Pastor Jackie Crockerham Brown.
She already did.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I can't read the name, but I believe she lives on Huntsville. Is that? You live on Dawson? Yes, ma'am. Come up, please. Name and address, please.
Noel Payton at 3004 Dawson Street. I'm here on my behalf to speak with the Jefferson Parish School Board bus drivers. I moved to the area of Blanca Manor in 2012. The purpose of me building my house is to put my bus in the driveway. I have pictures here showing that I'm more than 20 feet off the street. I have a double-side driveway with a fence around. I'm here because we are serving our children of Jefferson Parish School Board, and the school board is not paying us dead miles to get from where we park to our first student in the mornings and when we leave in the school to where we go back and park. And it's gonna be an issue with me because some mornings I have to come home and see to my father, and I have to pull my bus in my driveway. And on last Thursday, I got a citation said I had to move my bus. And there's no way where I can go because we're not rich to go find property in a commercial area. And like I said, you know, it's just, that was me bringing my money into the community of the city of Kenner and paying my tax dollars, and I'm not comfortable of parking my bus on side my house when I don't have no neighbors on side of me at all. And I have pictures to show that I've been there 5 years, and my house is worth over $250,000. And I don't think it's fair because I had the builder to put an extra driveway for my bus. And I'm speaking of the other buses, we're not harming anybody. It's 4 buses back there, and they are like parking in their backyard, and some is parking an empty lot on the side. And I'm like, we're not bothering anyone, you know? And some don't bring their bus back home. We have another driver, she don't come back in the midday. She only parked there overnight. So, and I think it's not fair at all.
Well, thank you for coming in and expressing your concerns today. Mr.
We
Walters,
have pictures if y'all want to look at it.
yeah, after the meeting, I'll look at them.
Okay.
But Mr. Waters is not here today. We all will be talking to him as we address this, just like we're addressing the infamous boat issue. I mean, we have an ongoing conversation on other things. So, you know, we in the city of Kenner are going to do our best to try to ensure that not only we get quality of life, but be fair with everybody in the city of
Yes, 'cause
Kenner.
when I went to code enforcement on Friday, I spoke to Travis Smith. He said I was up to code. I'm on a driveway slab. My bus is more than 20 feet from the street, and I have a fence around it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Have a nice day. I'll look at the pictures after.
Shaking your head no.
Yes, sir. Name and address.
Mac Willis, 3100 Jasper Street, Kenner, Louisiana. I'm also a Jefferson Parish bus driver. I've been living at 3100 Jasper Street since 1978. I bought a bus in 98. They told me I couldn't park the bus on the street, so I built a fence all the way around my backyard, put a slab in my backyard, put my bus in my backyard, and I thought everything was fine. Only time you might catch my bus at the front of my house is I'm in between schools. Other than that, it's in my yard, out of the way, and I got a wood fence all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I don't see any more names. Motion. Oh, one more. Name and address.
Dolores Windsor, 1521 Mayfield Street. We are asking that the mayor and you all abide by this law you made, okay? We're sorry that those that have their buses back there, they're disappointed in it because they can't park them back there, but you all made the law. We're expecting y'all to enforce the law, just like in every other district. You're not going to find school buses here, 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 and here in certain districts, and we want the same in our district. It's been going on for too long, too long. So we want the same thing. It's the law, and we're expecting y'all to enforce the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. The name and address, please.
Natalia Riley, 3121 Phoenix Street, Apartment 8, Kenner, Louisiana. I just have 2 questions. Her husband drove a school bus. She wasn't here complaining. A bus picked her up in front of her house. She ain't here complaining about that neither. But these people livelihoods, and it's a problem. Why she wasn't here when her husband was driving? She ain't complain about that.
Miss Davis, I'll let you address her, but
Yes, sir.
1 minute,
And
okay?
You know, on many occasions I've been here and was reported that my husband drove a bus, and just like I would say, he has to abide by the law of the land. If the law says he has to move his bus, then he has to move his bus. Okay? So guess what? I am not condoning what my husband did. When he had a bus, yes, he did park at home. But now things have changed. Just like the gentleman just stated, we can't continue doing things the same old way.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn, motion. Second.